Justice.
What is up, Guardians? Welcome to the first episode of the Moonlight Justice podcast. Moonlight Justice is a fan podcast dedicated to all things Sailor Moon. I'm your host, Grayson, and I'm going to introduce you to my co-host.
Hello, hi, I am Z.
And yo, what's up, my good homie? My name's Louie. It's a pleasure to be here. What's good? Hi.
Leave it to you, Lumi, I swear.
Yep.
I'm the comedic relief. I gotta take that one.
Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to go over the power of three, which are three principles that we operate by here on Moonlight Justice. So, one, practice controversy with civility. So we will respectfully discuss our thoughts and opinions without a feeling of judgment towards each other as well as towards our audience. Number two, things will always be discussed constructively and positively. It's easy to discuss things in a negative light, and we'll definitely do our best to be positive about some of the discussions that we are having. Three, we will not engage in racism, xenophobia, any type of phobias or triggers. However, these topics might come up during our discussions, and we'll be sure to provide a warning or a disclaimer to let you know that that's what we'll be discussing. So, since this is our first episode, I think it'll be great for our guardians to get to know us better, as well as what we'll be doing on the podcast in future episodes. So, our first talking point is how did we meet each other? What was our first impression of each other? And if we could describe each other in 3 words, what would they be? And we will start with Lumi.
Oh, hey, what's up? So I actually first met Z back in 2019, 2020. They didn't know who I was.
Pause.
But
The icebreaker went off, so try again.
So I first met Z back in like 2019, 2020 of TikTok. That was when I first saw their videos, and I was like, "Ooh, this is sick." And I like how to watch their videos. I actually remember following Z. I've been following Z before. And I remember watching their videos because I was like, "Ooh, I wanna get into cosplay," you know. And I was looking at people I wanted to follow, just in the content. And Z had shown up actually as one of the people. They were like one of the top, like I think top 20, first 20 people I had seen among a bunch of white people. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that in literally the first black cosplayer I saw. And Grayson, I actually met last year because their video, one of their Sailor Moon edits had actually come up on the page. It was like the first video. I think it was like the first or second edit that they had posted on their page. And then I also saw that Z was mutual to them. I was like, ooh, cool. And then I had joined their live, and then we started, doing live streams together, co-hosting, and with Z and all that. And then it just became history. If I were to probably describe Z in 3 words, it'd probably be a cinnamon roll.
Aww.
A cinnamon roll. They're very sweet. Second word, patient. Very patient. Yeah, cinnamon roll, patient, and a nerd.
Expected.
But I mean that in the most nicest and respectful way, because like I know I'm a nerd, but like Z, oh my gosh, Z, I literally love you. You like nerd out, and it's so like amazing to watch. Like I don't mean that in a bad way either. It's just like I like watching you nerd out. It's like really fun. And then Grayson, if I were to describe you in 3 words, I don't know, feeling some type of way because you want to fight.
So just for a little context, Z is kind of not Z, but Lumi is kind of salty with me because She forgot when we were recording this podcast episode, so we have been giving her grief like on live yesterday. So
For a solid hour, I might add. A solid hour. Which wasn't even intentional, by the way. I had thought that we were like in the time between 9 and 12. I didn't know that we were actually recording between that time.
but
Then you were just like,
specifically
we gonna
said,
fight.
but I specifically said we needed a few hours to record because we have so much to talk about. And usually our lives, when we did our co-hosted lives, they would go for like 2-3 hours.
Really? I always thought they were for like 5 or 6.
Oh, that too, possibly.
Alright, please.
But yes, your 3 words, please.
My 3 words, okay. Definitely compassionate. What's a synonym for teasing? Because there's a word for it. I don't know, playful, I guess. Very confident in themselves as well. And very caring. I know that's like probably 4 or 5 words, but like those are like all the words because I can't just describe you in like 3 words. Like that's hard to do. Z, it's a little easier because like Z's just a cinnamon roll. Z's just a cinnamon roll. You're a little complex, but in a good way. I can't just describe you in 3 words. That's a little hard to do.
Oh.
Okay, Z, you're next. Go ahead and tell us how you met me and Lumi. What were your impressions of us? And 3 words to describe the 2 of us.
Oh shit, I forgot impression.
Okay, so I'll start with Lumi. I met Lumi on TikTok around 2020-ish. And my first impression was, dang, I love their cosplay so much. And they seem super duper sweet and super duper cool. And then we started DMing each other, and the rest is history. And we even got to meet each other at Hobbit last year, and it was so fun. I wish we would have met even longer, but Lumi's super cool. Aww, Lumi's super duper cool. Now, Grayson, G. I saw a lot of G's edits on my For You page last year, and they were primarily PGSM edits, which had me screaming and hollering because I love PGSM, and I rarely saw people talk about PGSM as a whole. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. They make PGSM edits. And then I saw Saber Mute edits, and people were sending me both PGSM edits that G had made and Saber Mute edits because that's just what I love. And then eventually we followed each other, and the rest is history from there. And my first impression of G was that, oh, G is really cool because G knows about PGSM. So they're automatically cool in my book. Automatically cool because you love PGSM. And then on top of that, you know Saber Mute, so you're definitely super cool. My 3 words for describing Lumi are inspirational, because Lumi to me is Lumi to me is very, very inspiring in everything that they do. My second word is oh goodness, what's my second word? I just had it on the brunt of my forehead. Cool. The second word is cool. It's like no matter what Lumi does, Lumi puts like a super duper cool spin on it. So inspiring, cool, and unique. I say unique is the 3rd word. Unique. Because it kind of juxtaposes with cool. I think any cosplay that Lumi does, she's gonna put like a super duper cool and unique spin on it. So inspiring, cool, and unique. Those are my 3 words for Lumi. And I could go into heavier, further detail with that, but this isn't gonna be a crime session. And then my 3 words for G, creative, because all of the edits that G does are super duper creative. Second word is wise. There's a lot of conversations that I've had with G, and I love the perspective that he brings into a lot of the conversations that we have. So I'd say very wise, because he offers different perspectives. And then the 3rd word is silly, because a lot of people don't know, but G is super duper silly. Like really, really silly, but like in a good way. And it just shows nice little humor. So those are my 3 words for G.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad we're not on camera because I'd be cheesing.
That's what I've been doing this whole time.
Okay, so all right, so let's see here. So the first question was, how did I meet you guys? What were my impressions of you? And 3 words to describe each of you. So I'll start with Z because I met Z first. And Z just kind of like popped up out of the blue. She's probably one of the first followers to really like reach out to me via comments on my edits. And she was really friendly, and it was very comforting because it was a very new space for me, especially on TikTok. I have really bad social anxiety, so it was really nerve-wracking for me to interact with people in that type of space. And my impression was, I was blown away by like how creative she was, because the first video that I saw was the Tanya Yellow Ranger transformation sequence thing that you did. So that was the very first impression I got for you, and I was like, oh, she loves Power Rangers. She's like automatically cool in my book. So I was like, I think she was also one of the like first few followers that I had followed back, and I'm really glad that I did. That was really good. It was definitely an unexpected connection, so I'm really glad that happened. And Miss Lumi, Lumi has been like, she has been around, and I've seen, it's so weird because I did not, I think the first impression, like the first connection I missed. That's kind of like what sticks out to my head, because Lumi has been around since the beginning, but I didn't know who she was. And I think that's very interesting because when we started this podcast, I was like, oh, what's your TikTok? And she's like, luminary_peach. And I'm like, I know who that is. So it's so funny. It's like, because she was there when I first went live and everything like that. But I never connected the two, because when you went live with me that first time with me and Z, Lumi, I didn't even make the connection then until I asked for your TikTok handle or your bio, which I still have yet to get. So it's like, so for me, it's like the disconnect is kind of like the disconnection is like how I associate meeting Lumi for the first time, because I met her in the beginning, but I didn't know who she was until like recently. And my first impression of Lumi was hilarious. She came out of the blue, and like I said, I have very bad social anxiety. So when I was live with Z and she asked to go live, I was very nervous because, again, I didn't know who she was. But the first impression that I got, especially in that live with Z, was of like a vibe. Like something just clicked, and it was that live between the three of us was such a vibe and such a mood, because it was like, you could have, like, the way we were talking, you would swear that we had been friends for like 5-10 years, and we've only known each other like within a year. So that was my kind of first impressions of you guys, and also how I came to meet both of you. 3 words to describe Z.
Okay.
Cinnamon roll is definitely a good description of like of Z. Like, looks like a cinnamon roll, is a cinnamon roll. But yes, Z is very kind. She's very compassionate. She's in touch with her emotions, and she's probably genuine is a word that comes to mind. She's genuine in everything she says and does, and so it always comes from a place of like honesty and true like authenticity. So I definitely appreciate that about Z. And Lumi, definitely very passionate, funny, and a third word I would say
Thinking about it.
yeah, compassionate, funny, and
Girl, go on with your best self.
yeah, passionate, funny, and just I don't want to say crazy because that doesn't like really fit what the description I'm trying to go for, but I would say rambunctious, like just full of energy. That's what I love about Lumi is that she brings this type of energy that just gets you hype. So those are the three words that I would use to describe Lumi.
Y'all making me blush. I'm too dark for this.
It's truth.
So, since this is a Sailor Moon podcast, I think it's important to talk about how we started watching Sailor Moon and which version of the show did we start watching. And we're going to start with Z.
I knew it. So I actually started watching Sailor Moon through the live action series, Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon was recommended to me when I was a freshman in high school, and I always came across the henshins from the live action, and I was like, oh, this looks a little different. And they actually had all the episodes on YouTube at that time, so I was like, well, this is Sailor Moon, this is what person recommended, so I'm going to try this out, and the rest is history. I got very into PGSM, and then from there I was able to get into the other iterations like the musicals, Crystal, the manga, and all that fun stuff.
Nice. How about you, Lumi?
So I actually started watching Sailor Moon when I was in kindergarten. My aunt actually, when I was leaving for school, because I was really nervous when I was a little girl, I had like huge social anxiety, like insane amount. It's gotten better over the years, not much, but it's gotten better. And my aunt, she was like, "Hey, when you get back, you can watch Sailor Moon." And I was like, "What's that?" She's like, "It's a really cute show, and I think you would love it." And I was like, "Okay." So I was like waiting, and when we got back, we like sat on her bed, and the version that we had started off was the CIC dub, but I believe she said aired on TV when she was a little girl. They didn't have all the episodes at the time, and I didn't get to actually finish Sailor Moon when I was younger with my aunt at the very least, because I had to. She didn't have enough time because she was also in school at the time. So when I was able to get my first phone in, I believe, 3rd grade is when I actually finished Sailor Moon. And I finished the CRC dub. At the time, they did have all the episodes on there. Not all the episodes. I want to say maybe up to like the end of like Sailor S. And then the rest I watched in like with the other dub that was available at the time. And then, the rest is history. After that, I got into the Japanese version, and then PGSM, literally in the same year as well. And then, I read the manga, of course, when I was older, because I just wasn't old enough to comprehend manga and stuff. But, yeah. I grew up with Sailor Moon. I'm a little Sailor Moon baddie.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I wanted to start with Z because I thought it was very interesting when I first started talking with her, and she told me she watched PGSM first, and that kind of like really changed my perspective on how people got into Sailor Moon, because when I started watching Sailor Moon, I first saw Sailor Moon when I was in elementary school. I didn't start watching it until I was in middle school / high school. And in the here in the US, the only version available in the 90s and 2000 was the Deke dub and the Cloverway dub. So I grew up on the Deke dub, It aired on Toonami at 4 o'clock, right after school. And so my experience in watching Sailor Moon was very linear. So I watched the Deke dub. And so from the Deke dub, I realized and learned that it was based off an original Japanese show. So when I started learning more about the Japanese show, and more releases were coming out where they were releasing the actual Japanese version, I started watching the Japanese version and got into it that way. And so my progress from there was very linear. So it was like the Deke dub and the Japanese dub, and then the movies, and then later on PGSM. Like I watched PGSM when it first debuted in 2003, and then from there I didn't get into the musicals until the pandemic, but I always knew what the musicals were, and they were always around, and I had some of the songs, but it was really hard to get a lot of the Sailor Moon content back in the day, because anime in general was very hard to get during that time. So it's like, unless you were going to your Japan towns or your Chinatowns, or you had friends in the military that were traveling overseas, it was really hard to get those items, and even like downloading was close to impossible because internet was nothing like it is now. So I thought it was very interesting when Z said she watched PGSM first, because it was like it totally threw that linear progression that I had like out of whack, and that the way like the how many iterations there are of Sailor Moon, there's no longer one path, there's multiple paths to the fandom, which I thought was really cool.
It still throws people off.
I know, right?
like when I did my panel at AWA, like talking about PGSM and the musicals, I had asked like, how did people get into Sailor Moon? And I think most everybody raised their hand when it came to the 90s anime and the manga. And I was like, well, I got into it through the live action. So I'm throwing a little bit of a curveball. People are like, really? Like, yeah, I got into it through the live action. So I got
Yeah, for me it
was. Yeah, when I had asked you, oh gosh, I was like, you got into PGSM first? Like, you didn't know what the 90s was? You got into PGSM first? And then when I told you I had gotten into it, like in third, like fourth grade, you were like, oh, really? I was like, yeah. The reality.
For me it was Deke dub, and then I read the mixed zine and Tokyo Pop mangas, and then I got into the Japanese version and stuff like that afterwards, and it was so hard to get a hold like of the original anime episodes. Like me and my friends were depending on screen caps and like different websites, because it was so hard to get information on stuff like that. So, and that's how a lot of the headcanons came into place, because a lot of people were trying to figure out what Sailor Moon was about and what the other planets, like the other planet sailors, would look like or what they would be like, and we had no idea. So people were literally making up stuff as they were going along. I was even one of them. Like I was just making up stuff, trying to make things connect. I know that when I went to my local Chinatown here in Las Vegas, like I found like playing cards with Sailor Moon on there, but I didn't know who Super Sailor Moon was. I didn't know who Eternal Sailor Moon was. But I was seeing these images of, the different Fukus, and, the different forms, and the additional, like I didn't know who Sailor Pluto was. I didn't know who Sailor Uranus was. I didn't know who Sailor Neptune was. And at that time, the Deke dub only went to Sailor Moon R. So I only saw Pluto, but I didn't know who Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn were. So it's very interesting to kind of like trying to piece it together and stuff like that. Like I was making up stories in my head, like, oh, this image must be related to this image, and they were in like a battle and stuff like that. Like, I tried to talk about that in the Discord too, like where we're talking about like I'll put those images up and say like, I thought this was this, and you're like, what?
I think that's so cool though.
Yeah, I think it was very interesting. I try to like bring that perspective to it because I think a lot of people tend to like forget. It's very easy to forget like how you got into it or the misconceptions that were taking place during that time, because now it's like you have access to you have pretty much access to the Viz dub, the Japanese dub, and stuff like that. But it's like the '90s kind of like fell to the wayside because there's no distribution for it. So it's very interesting. So with that being said, what is your preferred or favorite version of Sailor Moon? And we'll start with Lumi.
Are you talking about in terms of dub, or are you talking about in terms of group?
The version of Sailor Moon, I'm talking about the preferred version of Sailor Moon. Like, is it the anime? Is it the manga? Is it PGSM? Is it the musicals? What will be your preferred version? It can be the original, it could be the dub, whatever is your preference.
I don't know. Because when I was younger, oh my god, I thought I was a little traitor for this. So originally, I used to be a huge, like, DIC dub, Cloverway dub fan, and then I got into PGSM, and I was like, no, PGSM is so much better, especially when I watched, like, the special act movies, and then I saw Mamo and Usagi get married, spoilers, but I don't know. I think, if anything, I'll probably stick with Cloverway, maybe? I don't know. I guess there's just something so interesting about when she goes, with her... Because I think the reason why I love that dub so much is because it probably has so much it sticks out to me the most. And I'm probably thinking of the DIC dub, especially when Mama was such like a complete person in the first like season, which is like, oh my gosh, like I love the voice acting. I hated the cousins thing though. But it also probably sticks out to me the most because it was also something that I had grew up on. So I'm probably gonna say the night because it is so memorable for me.
That is so valid and very true. It is pure nostalgia at this point. It'll always have a special place in my heart. The Deke dub and the Cloverway dub, and yeah. What about you, Z?
Well, I'm horribly biased. My preferred version is PGSM, but that's just because of the nostalgia that it has for me. Like, I remember watching it when I would get home from track practice. I remember getting my very first Sailor Moon item, which was a Sailor Moon necklace that I had bought at, I believe, FYE. And I bought the necklace specifically because it reminded me of Usagi's transformation necklace. I remember getting into all the character songs and stuff, and it's just such a wonderful time to reminisce on. So I gotta say, PGSM, like, it left a really, really big impact on me.
Okay. For me, I would have to say that I prefer the Japanese version, just because as much as I love like Deke and Cloverway, it's definitely it will always be my gateway into Sailor Moon, so I would never dismiss it or say that it is not Sailor Moon. Like, it is definitely a Sailor Moon dub that is basically congruent with other dubs, and it had its own iteration. It will always be a gateway for me. Deke dub is pure nostalgia magic, and it always will be. And I remember when Cloverway first premiered on Toonami, and I literally like lost my mind. I was at my friend's house because we had been waiting for Sailor Moon S and Supers to be dubbed in English, and it had been so many years since they did the first 2 seasons of Sailor Moon with the Deke dub, so we just assumed that it would never happen, and around that time a lot of people had access or had watched the original Japanese version in some capacity, so they knew about Uranus and Neptune and Sailor Stars and stuff like that. So it was like, seeing some of the things that were happening, we're like, okay, well, the way our media is set up here in the U.S., we'll probably never see anything like that because, you know, gay people weren't on TV like that. And it's just like, and because it's considered a kid's show, we knew that there was something, and it was very true because when it premiered on Toonami, the Sailor Moon S and Super season on Clover Way, we were left aghast. Like, it was like, they're cousins. Why are they cousins? And it is something that persists to this day. And I'm like, if you had to, like, if you didn't want to put emphasis on their relationship, you could have made them best friends. Why cousins? Because it just, the jokes are unending when it comes to that
To this
decision.
day.
And the Clover Way was riddled with just some weird changes, like there were, you know, the missed dub lines and stuff like that, but that's a story for another day. But yes, my preferred version would definitely be the Japanese Sailor Moon, the 90s anime. I think because it told so much, it had some more story compared to the English dub at that point in time, because there were only 2 seasons. So it's like, oh my gosh, 5 seasons worth of Sailor Moon content and learning so much. And the Japanese voice actresses did an amazing job, and it's just always like stuck with me. And I just remember, you know, going through high school and college, like literally like listening to the Japanese soundtracks and watching the episodes and stuff like that. Like it was all an experience that I'll never forget.
That's so nice.
So speaking so, you know, that kind of segues into our next talking point. And so, you know, we know that we have our preferred and favorite versions, and we talked about like why we like those. And I think that ties into what Sailor Moon means to us and how we relate to Sailor Moon. So Z, how much does Sailor Moon mean to you, and how does Sailor Moon relate to you as a person?
Oh my goodness. So Sailor Moon means the Mick absolute world to me. It was probably one of the first few fandoms that I was in, because I think at the time when I was getting into Sailor Moon, I was also into Soul Eater, Percy Jackson, and I was lightly engaging within those fandom spaces. But I think Sailor Moon was the first fandom space that I like actively engaged with, to the point where I made like ship weeks on Tumblr, because Mamoru and Usagi don't get enough love. So I like Sailor Moon means the world to me. Like I've made way too many costumes from this anime. I know way too many songs. I know all the dances. When it comes to how Sailor Moon relates to me personally, and like what Sailor Moon means to me personally, I think it's really cool to see a protagonist that is not afraid to show her emotions in the midst of things happening. And I think that it just hits a little different, because I consider myself to be a fairly emotional person. I mean, I literally cry when I watch a Sailor Moon episode. And I know when life gets stressful and things are happening, it's often, I'll say, advertised that you should hold your emotions in and you shouldn't be showing this kind of stuff. It's not right. You should just keep strong and keep at it. But no, I want to cry if things are not happen as they should. If I'm stressed, I shouldn't have to hold everything in. So I think seeing a protagonist that's not only compassionate, but also emotional, in the sense of, I'm not going to let my tears shy and take away from the strength that I have, I think that's really empowering, and that's something that's kind of stuck with me to this day.
Oh, well said. That's really good. What about you, Lumi?
Can you repeat the question? I was so focused, and I wasn't even saying. I forgot what the question was.
I'm glad my answer was thought provoking.
She went 0 to 100 real quick. She went deep. So, what does Sailor Moon mean to you, and how does Sailor Moon relate to you?
Okay. Sailor Moon means like a lot to me. Like, I'm gonna get a little deep here. I was not liked as a child, like, at all. I had no friends, not a single one, not one. I think my only friend was probably my mom at the time, and like a fake friend that I had, who would like tease me at school. So when I would get home, or when I late at night or in the morning, I would just be watching Sailor Moon. And I'd be like, she was basically my companion, literally growing up for like all the way until maybe fifth or sixth grade when I made my first actual friend. Me and the friends, that I've made, of course, the few that I made growing up, we don't talk anymore. But Sailor Moon was literally my companion. She was there for me when I was, getting bullied, mercilessly by the whole district, by the way. And she's just been there for me growing up, if anything. So she just means a lot to me. The series means a lot to me. It taught me a lot about, friendships and things that I didn't understand, things that I didn't have, things that I didn't know. Because I'd never really got to interact with it, So she was just there for me, especially the times when I was depressed and I would just watch it and feel insanely better, I think how Sailor Moon probably relates to me. Like, are we talking about like Usagi herself, or are we talking about like the show? We're talking Usagi then.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, I think it's like what the show means to you and how the character relates to you.
Okay. So how Usagi relates to me is, one, we're both Cancers. She's a June Cancer. I'm a July Cancer. But we share a lot of similarities. Like, she calls herself 50. I would consider myself pretty 50 as well, but not all 50. I get very emotional.
The podcast is being recorded, so yes, that's it.
Listen.
Bringing that right back on in.
Bringing all the Usagi energy.
Right. I think also, like, with her personality as well, like, her and I are huge foodies. I relate to, her little power struggle with Chibi Usa, but also not in the same way, because, listen, I would never fight for a man with my own child, but you know what? That's just me. But, I relate to her in that sense that, like, with me and children, we be tussling. I love them, but we be tussling. Rudy, gaming, being clumsy. I'm very clumsy, forgetfulness, being late, all of that. I think I pretty much relate to. I can definitely say the level of patience that I probably have is not as much as like Usagi's. Her obliviousness, I'm a little close. But I want to say that's probably how I relate to Usagi. Like, I am a coward in terms of confrontation as well. So I think Usagi is also better than me in that, because she's able to do it. She's able to get through it. Me, I'm just there like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. And then I like eventually force myself to do it, which actually, wait, hold on. Maybe I'm a little closer to what I thought. This is just me rambling. Don't even blame me.
Okay. All right. That's a great answer, Lumi. And I had no idea that.
Listen.
Hold on, real quick. I'm adding in another question, so bear with me.
Oh my goodness.
Because I have to know. So hold on, but I'm going to answer this question. Just give me a minute.
Okay, what's the question?
I'm going to answer. It's going to be in the next like 2 questions, I promise. So.
Oh goodness.
I'm scared. I'm scared.
I am too.
Okay, so what does Sailor Moon mean to me, and how does Sailor Moon relate to me? Sailor Moon is one of my cornerstones in my life. I think that growing up as a shy, sensitive, introverted, socially anxious kid, Sailor Moon definitely provided a comfort for me. Definitely during a time where things were so uncertain. I definitely had a hard time making friends. Not because I wasn't likable, but because I just moved around a lot as a kid. So I really couldn't firmly establish like any roots like that. I did make some, friends that I have to this day, but it's like my friend circle is very small. And I think that kind of comes from that environment. But Sailor Moon has been a cornerstone, has been my cornerstone. It's been my rock. So it was always my comfort place to go to when things were getting hard. So it's like literally any money that I got, I was using to buy Sailor Moon stuff. So the very first thing that I bought was the Memorial music box. I've always had this like ear for music, and not music in a sense where like popular music or radio or anything like that, but background music, compositions, orchestration. And I think that's why the Japanese version is my preferred version, because there have been some really emotional music cues that appear in the show that really like tugged on my heartstrings. So I would literally like them. So I don't know if you guys have seen the Memorial music box, but it is a 6 CD set of the soundtracks from the entire show and the movies.
I have seen it.
And I literally carried that box wherever I went in my backpack. And there was no MP3 players back then. I literally had my CD player.
Your CD player? I'm about to say, there's probably CD
my
players.
headphone, and I would listen to disc 1 all the way through, put it back in its case, take out disc 2 and put it in. I literally listened to that box cover to cover every day. If I was on the bus, everywhere I went to school, I was listening to Sailor Moon music. And I think it really provided a safe space for me, especially in those places that made me socially anxious. I was able to hide away in that music, so that will always be a core memory for me. And what Sailor Moon means to me, I think Sailor Moon as a character, she embodies a lot of the ideals and principles that I adhere to when it comes to myself as a person and as a friend. I think that, her compassion as well as her unyielding personality are things that I aspire to, and the sacrifices that she's willing to make for the people that she loves speaks volumes to me. And I would like to think that as a person that I would go to the same lengths for my loved ones as well. I think it's like, I don't necessarily relate to the ditziness and the clumsiness that she exhibits throughout the show, but it's like those tender emotional moments where her true genuine personality comes through. I think that I relate to those moments the best.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's how I relate to Sailor Moon.
Such a wonderful answer.
Y'all are literally bringing tears to my eyes.
I got me crying in your club.
So I know that we talked about how we relate to Sailor Moon, but who is your favorite character in the Sailor Moon universe? Z.
Oh, how dare you?
Oh no. Oh no. I always say I can't pick favorites just because Lumi, so help me. I always say I can't pick favorites because I have different favorites for different reasons.
Right.
But I think throughout any version, Sailor Jupiter is my favorite character. Like Sailor Moon and Sailor Jupiter, but Sailor Jupiter specifically, just because like the first version I watched, she was the first character that I got really, really attached to. When it came to her story, when it came to how she presents herself, it was just one of those characters I was like, oh, you're literally me in a different font. So I gotta say Sailor Jupiter, and she was the first Senshi that I ever cosplayed, so that's another extra little impact.
Okay, what about you, Lumi?
I'm gonna go with Hotaru, or Sailor Saturn, just because at first I want to say my favorite character was Usagi, of course, and then it transformed to Jupiter, and then when I met Hotaru, and I was like, whoa, who is this? Am I allowed to get into the reason why? Or do I just gotta say it? Okay. I fell in love with her tragic villain character. Like she's not a villain either. It's just
Right.
she was used. And when she was both Sailor Saturn in her past life, and then when she was brought back as Sailor Saturn, people saw her as a calamity. And it's very tragic and it's hurt, it's painful, and it's very raw. And the way that they portray it in both, I feel like the way they both portray it in both the Japanese dub, which is also why I also love the Japanese dub. I would have said it was my favorite, but DIC and Clover is just nostalgia for me. But the way that they portray her in the Japanese dub and in the manga, it was just, especially when she was Mistress 9 and when she was 6, and that arc with her father, the doctor, it was just, her story was so amazing, and it really hit me on a deep level. So usually I'd be struggling with my favorite character because I never have a favorite character, but Saturn will forever be my only favorite character just because of her character, her story, the way she was portrayed, her tragic villain story where she wasn't even really a villain. She was just a poor little girl who had a duty from Queen Serenity and Neo Queen Serenity to protect the century and to protect the outer planets. And she had to literally reset the universe. And people were just like, "Oh, once you sleep that place, it's over for you." Like, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. Gotta put her to sleep. But it's like she's just such an amazing character, and I feel like once you get to know her actual true character and you know how she is and what she fights for and her beliefs and the things that she loves, you're like actually like you really love her a lot more than.
Okay. I agree with both of you. I really don't have quote unquote favorites. I get this question, and I'm pretty sure Z and Lumi can attest. Like we get these questions a lot, like in
A
our
whole
lives.
lot.
Like I swear, it comes up like every 5 seconds. Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite? And I feel like Sailor Moon is kind of like, I like Sailor Moon, which is kind of like the Miss Universe answer for who's your favorite character. And of course, you like the main characters. But like, I think it's like, I like, if I had to choose a favorite, I probably would go through with Sailor Moon just because of the reasons I stated earlier, like her ideals and her passion and her compassion. I think that is like their ideals and principles that I would like, that I aspire to and adhere to. But I think what I like about Sailor Moon and why it's hard to choose favorites is that Naoko, the creator, the anime, does a good job of the ensemble element of the story, where I mean, even though the manga in Crystal is pretty fast-paced, I think the way that they present the characters in such a way where you like them as a whole, it's really hard to individualize them because they're such a great ensemble and they complement each other in such a way where one doesn't outshine the other. Like even Sailor Moon as the main character does not outshine the other characters in the story to where you're like picking standouts or picking favorites in such a way. You can pretty much name any character in the story and find something that you like about them,
Yeah.
So this is very interesting. So if I had to choose, it would probably be Sailor Moon. And then like people are like, well, what if it wasn't Sailor Moon? Okay, well, Sailor Mars or Sailor Venus are definitely characters that I like, and then they're like, okay, well, if it wasn't an inner senshi, what if it's an outer senshi? I would probably say like Sailor Uranus. Like I swear, it's like I get some that favorite question and then some variation of the favorite question just to get a better understanding, because a lot of the answers that I get tend to be like the Sailor Jupiters, Uranus and Neptune, Saturn, Mars or Venus, but it's like, Mercury doesn't tend to get a lot of love. Chibiusa is some people's favorite and stuff like that. But I do see some commonalities in some of the answers, and I think that it's because people see themselves in certain characters, and that's how they tend to be their favorites. And that was the extra question that I added in. What Sailor Moon character is most like you? And we'll start with Lumi.
Oh God. Lord.
She's like Queen of Helenia.
Maybe. We'll see. No, honestly, probably either Venus or Usagi.
Okay.
Like, if I'm being honest, it's probably either Venus or Usagi, and I'm not just considering like their personality, I'm considering like their true personality, what they have, hidden under what they, portray to everyone else, So for the most part, I probably want to say Minako. Definitely, probably Minako.
Okay.
Or Mercury, honestly. That is also why I chose Rukuku for, my little
the art.
Fan. Yeah, for the art. But yeah, probably between Ami, Usagi, and Minako. I'm definitely not like.
And what about you, Z?
I'll say for me, it's between Ami / Mercury, because we're both Virgos, and I realized that I have a lot of similarities with her. So I'd say Mercury, Mamoru, because I feel like there's a lot of personality things and characteristics and stuff when it comes to Mamoru that I really relate with and stuff. And then also Usagi. Those are my three.
Nice. I was actually thinking about this when we were talking about what Sailor Moon means to us and stuff like that. And initially, my answer probably would have been Sailor Moon, but honestly, I think the character I relate most to, or who is most like me, is Sailor Pluto. I think I think her being like, the guardian of time and space, it resonates with me as a person. I'm very much an introvert. I keep to myself for the most part. I'm very comfortable in my own space, and I'm okay with doing things on my own. And I think that kind of resonates with Pluto as a character. I think that even though she is comfortable with her duty and solitude as the guardian of time and space, I think she is also a person that wants to connect with others. And I think that she touches on that in the manga and in Crystal, where while she is okay with her duty, she wants to connect with others. She aspires to be like Sailor Moon herself, which I think speaks to me as well. Like, I would love to have the dedication and the passion and the zeal that Sailor Moon has. I haven't had the opportunity to really exhibit those characteristics in the way that Sailor Moon has. And I think that Sailor Pluto relates in that way. So I think that that's the character that relates to me the most when I think about it. Like, it's like I would, it's like, even like, I think that, my personality is kind of like in line with Usagi's in a way, but I think like the more I think about it, Pluto tends to be the the core of it, where it's like she's the oldest, I'm the oldest.
Oh my goodness.
I think that's thing. And there's another character that stood out to me, and I can't remember who it was. I know Sailor Pluto was one.
We can make old man jokes now. Parallel the musicals.
I think my answer would definitely be Sailor Pluto. So since we're talking about favorites, let's dive into some more favorites. So, out of all the versions of Sailor Moon, what is your favorite transformation? Any character, any transformation. So we'll start with Lumi.
Yes, please. Okay. So you guys know that episode where Usagi loses her transformation brooch and Mamoru brings her to this abandoned building and it has a bunch of cats in it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And she first gets the moon heart rod. That is my favorite transformation. I'm so dead ass. Like it is so it's a classic, okay? And yeah, there's the the sparkly transformation, and the Eternal Sailor Moon transformation is so pretty, and it has meaning with Kotaru, and you have the Cosmos Sailor Moon, with the wings and stuff. And it's like, I'm not even gonna lie, she ate that outfit, but I don't know. I love the heart where she spins in it, and the music. It's so good. And then when she gets the moon heart rod, it's just so many feels, and it's just so much love that is attached to that transformation specifically. I feel like out of all the transformations, it's probably like a hard fight between that one and the Super Sailor Moon. When she's like famous Kotaru, like who has the most like emotional baggage to it. But I feel like probably the one that the moon heart would win, which is why that one is specifically my favorite. Arguably one of the best ones.
That's really good, Lumi. What about you, Z?
PGSM aside, my I think my favorite transformation sequence, one of them specifically is a transformation sequence that happens in the Bandai musicals. I believe the musical is I, E, and Ni. It's basically, I think it covers Super S.
Okay.
But Usagi and Chibi Moon actually, they have a transformation and they project it, and it's cool because I think it adds a sense of realism to Usagi's transformation sequences, because most of the time we often see them animated, PGSM, doing its own cool little thing, but seeing them transform on stage and them doing like the same kind of effects that they did in the anime, because I know PGSM didn't exist yet. I think that's really cool, and it shows that like Sailor Moon can transcend, past the animation screen. Because I don't know, I would have lost my mind if I was in that theater seeing Usagi and Chibi Moon get their Super Sailor Moon forms and then they appear on stage. Like, I think that's so cool.
Yes, I think it is really cool. And I love these answers because they're not your typical, like, cookie cutter answers. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it just goes to show that everybody has like specific moments that they like tied to a transformation. So I think it's really cool. I love both of these answers because it wasn't like, oh, I like Jupiter Star transformation, and I like like, even though Lumi chose the cosmic transformation, she tied it to a specific moment in the show when she first got, like, when she couldn't transform and when she got that transformation power back, and she was able to get her power from her relationship with Mamoru. I love the tie-in to that, and honestly, the scene that you speak about, Z, I know exactly what you're talking about too, Z.
Nice.
And it is like, and honestly, it is the only time that you see them transform on stage in the musicals, in the Bandai era, for that matter. That was like iconic because it was iconic, and it's very rare because it did not happen ever again after that.
Nope, like it would be off-screen kind of stuff.
It would always be off-screen.
Yeah.
And I really wish that they would have kind of like kept with that motif, because I really think they could have like done more with that. Yes, it would have aged. I would have preferred that. Yes, and I would have preferred, Nogi Miyu, like, I like their practical stage effects, but I really wish that they would have implemented, since they were using the screen already, I think that would have been a great way for them to transition into their soldier forms rather than them doing the practical stage effects. It's very creative, but you could also see it happening.
Yeah. Like
you could see all the quick change. Like, even though it was a quick change, you could still see the moving parts. Like, you could see them getting ready to tear away the uniform, stuff like that. So it's very interesting to see. For me, I have to say I have two favorite transformation sequences, and they tend to be tied to very emotional type scenes. So number one would have to be when Sailor Moon is able to become Sailor Moon one last time with her own heart crystal. I think that when she became Super Sailor Moon using her own heart was it was a very epic moment, especially in Sailor Moon as a whole, because it was very deep and dark. It was definitely grittier than the previous seasons. So, and that moment was just a testament to how far Sailor Moon is willing to go for her ideals. So I think that will always be like a pivotal Sailor Moon moment for me. The second would have to be when she becomes Princess Sailor Moon for the first time in PGSM. I think that...
Oh, yes, that was going to be my second answer. That was going to be my second transformation.
And I think, and once again, it's tied to an emotional response where Sailor Moon / Usagi felt powerless in something that she had no control over, and her heart, and we'll be delving into these topics as we go along. But I think that for her to have such an emotional response in such a way where it triggers not only another transformation, but a whole different personality on top of it, speaks volumes to me. And I think it's like one of my favorite, like it was definitely a turning point in PGSM for me, because it was definitely unexpected. Like I was blown away when I saw it for the first time, because I never imagined something like that happening in PGSM. I thought it was literally going to be like a strict like retelling of the manga, like it was going to be like very linear, and it definitely took some twists and turns as it went along.
That's really good.
Okay, so continuing on the favorite train out of all the Sailor Moon versions, doesn't matter what character it is, who has your favorite costume? And we'll start with our cosplayer aficionado Z, who has been cosplaying. Like she's done PGSM Moon, Eternal Sailor Moon, Princess Serenity, and now she's working on Princess Sailor Moon. I think it would be remiss of us not to have her answer first.
I'm screaming. Oh my goodness. So can you ask the question again, just so I have a full grasp before I dive deep?
Absolutely. So any character in any iteration of Sailor Moon, be it musicals, PGSM, the anime, the manga, what is your favorite costume?
Oh my gosh, this is so broad.
And there's so many.
There is so many. Oh goodness. Okay, so I guess top three. I'll do top three characters, and I'll explain my favorite costume for each character. Sailor Moon, Jupiter, and then it's like Tuxedo Mask for funsies. So Sailor Moon, my favorite costume for her, it has to be Eternal Sailor Moon from Crystal specifically, because I love the colors that they use in Crystal. Okay. I also love the Nelke Fuku, specifically the Fuku from Petite Etrangère, and also the Bandai Mi Fuku. Any version is fine because they're all beautiful. For Jupiter, I specifically love her PGSM outfit. I love how she has her little flower belt. I wish that was a detail that they added. I want to say in Crystal in the 90s anime, because I don't think they added that in those two counterparts. And I think it's a really cute design for her. But I love her PGSM costume for Jupiter. And then for Tsutoka Men-sama, I actually really like his PGSM design, mainly the mask portion. Okay. Because I think that's a really
which mask? Because he has two.
The one with the one with the gem in the middle. Because I think that's a really unique little design to his mask. And then I also really like his musical outfit. I know it's kind of cheesy in the sense of he has like a gold lining to
about
his
the Bandai musical costume.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know the gold satin lining, whatnot, can be a big throw off. But I love the dramatic flair that costume has, and that whomever is playing Mamoru at that point in time presents that costume in. I think it's really iconic, and it makes a statement.
Okay. And
Those are my
Lumi,
short answers.
awesome. So Lumi, you're also a cosplayer, so it would be remiss of me not to have you go next because
Yep.
you are equally talented when it comes to the cosplay and the understanding of costumes. So top 3.
Okay, so my top 3, I definitely have to. Oh my god, the Sailor Star girlies are gonna be really, really happy. So I have to say, it's not gonna be End of the Century, and I feel so bad. But
Don't feel
there's
bad.
a specific
feel
reason
bad.
because we have to get into the other characters, right? So first off, I want to start off with Tuxedo Common, but specifically Crystal, not from the 90s, from Crystal. And then the second one, I want to get into Seiya, but I want to get into their Sailor Starfighter costume. And then third of all, Kakyu. That's with Kakyu. And the reason why I chose these 3, I'm actually going to choose the 4th one because
Wait, what was the 3rd one again?
Kakyu, Princess Kakyu.
Oh, okay.
The 4th one, I'm cheating a little bit, but the 4th one is going to be the Moonlight Knight because no one talks about him.
Oh wow!
Like at all. Because he only I understand that he only shows up in a filler episode or a filler.
Right.
I understand that. However, his specific design is not talked about enough. And the split that he has from regular Mamo to alternate Mamo, from the Mamo who doesn't have his memories to the Mamo who does have his memories and separated. His design, well, I will admit it's a little controversial because it is based off of Brady and Nice. I think that is also a very interesting design, and I feel like it also deserves a lot more coverage on what it gets, And then the second one that I want to get into is Crystal Tuxedo Common. His suit is very crisp, and I say very crisp from comparison to the 90s to the Crystal is that in the 90s it's a very generic suit, a very generic suit with cape and all of that. But with the Crystal, you have the watch detailing there. You have the cape that also looks like it doesn't look bulky. It looks nice and it fits around his shoulders well. The one in the 90s is very bulky. It makes him look bigger than when he actually is. Which is not a bad thing. It's just the way that they present it in, for example, let's say PGSM, Tuxedo Common, and the 90s Tuxedo Common. Yes, PGSM Tuxedo Common, his is a little bulky, it's a little bigger than it should, but it also fits him very well. In the 90s, I feel like it's a little too bulky for him. It makes him look bigger than what he actually is, but not in a very good way, and I don't like it. But with the Crystal version, it's a very nice fit for him. Very crisp. You have the watch, as I said before, that holds between him and his body. It's very detailed. It's also very, very pretty, and it just reminds me of this. It just reminds me of the Silver Millennium, which I also love so much. And then my third is Princess Kakyu, because when you look at Princess Kakyu's design, you would think, with the 90s and with Crystal, it would, like, her dress would be like solid red. No, it's not. It has different shades of red. It has blues in it. It has oranges in it. And her hair, it's like, oh my god, I want to talk about that. You don't know. But the sheer of her skirt and then her shoes, you can tell that it's like her dress comes from a different culture, but the way that they portray it is very pretty. And then with the lamp that she has, and how she also does it. But I just think that her costume is very pretty, and it was very well thought of. Like, I know it was like made like in the manga, but the way that they portray it, with the release that they got with Crystal, and the way that they portrayed it in the 90s was very gorgeous and was very pretty. And I think it was just brilliant. And then my fourth is Seiya. And I say Sailor Starfighter because, she ate. Like, just ate with the booty shorts, with the skin exposed. I hate rat tails, and I hate that the bangs were so high. But you know what? It is okay because he makes it work. He makes it work. You know, with the high bangs, with the rat tail, it looks so good. And the outfit, it just pulls together so well with the stars, with the strap. It's very slay. And I know I'm using that word incorrectly, but that is the only way I can come up with the thing. Those are my 4 top favorite costumes. Sailor Moon as a whole. And I wanted to include PGSM costumes, like the Princess Sailor Moon costumes, but I would go in way too much because I literally love way too many, and we would literally be here for 10 minutes about me just talking about my favorite costumes.
I was the exact same. I'm like, I would go into this. So let me get my short answers out of the way.
Right, and I think that this is just like a great way for us to be able to give our audience an idea of some of the things that we'll be talking about and the amount of detail that we can go into with these discussions. So for me, I will do a top 3 and an honorable mention, because I think that costuming and fashion is very important in Sailor Moon, because Naoko herself was inspired by fashion, period, when it came to a lot of the character designs that she did. So top 3 for me. Number 1, I would have to say Super Sailor Moon. I think, and I honestly, I just like the concept of Super Sailor Moon. I definitely see the butterfly motif that comes out of that. I definitely like, I have to say that my favorite version of the Super Sailor Moon costume is the Nail K version of the costume.
Yeah, it eats.
Just because it adds a level of detail. That's one thing I liked about the Nail K costumes in general, is that it wasn't like the Bandai costumes that kind of like took their own creative liberties. It took the source and embellished it in such a way where it paid homage to the original design, but added the level of detail that kind of like gave a sense of realism to it. So I think that definitely stands out for me. Number 2 would probably have to be, I'll probably have to say Princess Sailor Moon. I think that, and I say Princess Sailor Moon / Eternal Sailor Moon because I see a lot of the Eternal elements in the Princess Sailor Moon costume. The white and red boots, the navy coloring, the gold line sailor collar. I think that's one of the reasons why I like Princess Sailor Moon, because in a sense it reminds me of the Eternal costume. And it's probably the closest you'll ever get to a live action version of Eternal Sailor Moon.
Christ.
And I think number 3, I would have to say the Eternal Fuku, and not just Eternal Sailor Moon. I like the Eternal versions that the other Sailor Guardians get. I like the sense of uniformity amongst all of them. They're, like, I know that some people like the other costumes, like especially their first costumes, because there's a lot of individuality in those costumes. Jupiter's flower petal belt, Venus's chain, Uranus's one earring or her hoop earrings, Neptune's like choker and her earrings and stuff like that. Sailor Saturn's like, sleeves. Sailor Mercury and Sailor Pluto not having sleeves. But I like that unification tends to be the commonality when it comes to how they're evolving as individuals and as a team. So it kind of talks about that in it kind of like it hints at that evolution when she becomes Super Sailor Moon for the first time in the manga, when they all get the heart brooches. And I think that theme is further expanded when they become Super Sailor Soldiers, because then they all have in like uniform costumes, the heart, the transparent sleeve, and the sailor collar with the one stripe on it. And the Eternal costumes continue that theme where it's like they all have star earrings, they're wearing the same boots, same gloves. So I think that sense of unity and sense as a team stands out in that respect. That was 3, right?
Yes, that was 3.
Okay, so honorable mention, parentheses, S, mentions.
I could have went longer.
Listen, I was fully prepared to bring 6.
Right. I'm not going to jump too deep into it, but I definitely think some honorable mentions. Like Lumi mentioned, the Sailor Starlight's costumes are standouts to me. Honorable mention, Sailor Galexia, the Sailor Anima mates, Sailor Kakyu. I think that, and I touched on this in my live last night, where I was like, I like that the common theme in their costumes is the sailor collar. Like that's what makes them sailor soldiers, is a sailor collar. All the other aspects of their costume could be whatever. Mm-hmm. But what makes them sailor soldiers or sailor guardians or sailor scouts or whoever, however you want to call them, is the sailor collar. That's what makes them a sailor. All the rest of it is just frills, which I think was a very cool concept that I read about. I think it was like on WikiMoon or something like that, where it's just like the definitive piece of a sailor soldier's costume is their sailor collar. So I thought that was very interesting. Mm-hmm. So let's see here. So we went over favorite characters, favorite costumes, favorite transformations. Like this is pretty much across the board. So I don't want to have to like say like every time like it doesn't matter what version of Sailor Moon you're talking about, but what is your favorite arc or season out of all the versions? Like if you had to choose one arc or season to watch, what would you watch? Let's start with Lumi.
Sailor Stars. Don't hesitate. Sailor Stars. And the reason that I say Sailor Stars is because, listen, while I would love to rewatch the first season and, re-go through the nostalgia that I had, experienced, I have to say Sailor Stars because of all the raw emotion that it had, that, Usagi for the first time, after meeting Mamo and, getting back together with him, reuniting with him after, her death after the Silver Millennium. It's like, this is the first season where she does not have him, like, at all. And I know she's a strong girl. She could, she could do everything by herself. She wasn't relying on him. But she couldn't talk to him. And she was trying to. And, he gave her a promise ring and everything. And they were engaged and they were going to get married when he got back. But he was dead, and she didn't know that. And she was basically struggling for an entire season to figure out what was going on with Mama, why he wasn't responding to her, why she was going through all of these things. And she didn't have Mama there with her to, while she had her own support system, also be her support. And then, to top it off, why she didn't really mind them. She had Seiya, I'm not talking about the 90s version right now. I will get to talking about the manga in just a second. But she had this, this dude who she didn't even know was coming after her, even though she was in a relationship. And every time she saw Seiya, she was like seeing like a shadow of Mamo, And then, with the manga, of course, Seiya wasn't, trying to seduce her, the way she was in the 90s. But at the same time, she did not have Mamo. Everything was raw for her. Everything was dark for her, right. And while her friends were in danger of, literally dying at every turn with past villains, especially with, with Wise Man and all of that, it was different with the Sailor Anime, or not the Sailor, are they the Sailor Animes, or with Celexia's, generals. It was different with them because they were genuinely like taking their starseeds, which is technically their soul, and killing them, And it came to that one episode, where they try to take Usagi, and that's when Princess Kaku appears. And that moment will forever be like revitalizing to me, especially like I want to say probably the other moment that like struck me so hard deep in the core is probably when Usagi is on the Ferris wheel and Seiya is singing "Search for Your Love," and he's trying to like I say he because, you know, in the 90s anime, they have Seiya as, you know, both a man who transforms into a woman, even though I already know Seiya is a woman. It's just disguised as a man. They have Seiya who sings to Usagi, trying to, you know, deliver a message through their song that, hey, this is what I am, this is where I came from, this is the war that I'm involved in, this is what you've now been involved in because of what Galaxia is doing, you know. And it was so dark, it was so heavy, it was so full of raw emotion, that it honestly, it overpowered S. Like, it overpowered S, you know, with the arc with Hotaru and Sailor Neptune and Sailor Uranus. It just overpowered everything. And that will honestly be a season I can rewatch. I can rewatch S, but I probably rewatch Sailor Stars first, just because of like what was going on and all the, you know, raw emotion it had and the tone that it had to it and the memory. You know, it was just so good. You know.
Okay. What about you, Z?
Dark Kingdom all day, every day. It is literally like the foundation and the beginnings of the Sailor Moon story. No matter how that narrative has gotten told, whether it's from the 90s anime, whether it's from PGSM, Crystal, the musicals, that's my favorite version because there's so many different ways that story can be told. With PGSM specifically having different twists and turns with the general story of the Dark Kingdom arc. And I'm gonna leave it there because I can really go into it. But that's like the Dark Kingdom arc. That's my favorite.
Okay, and I honestly, it's like, you know, Sailor Moon S and the Infinity arc. I think I'm like, unlike you, Z, where it's like any iteration of that story, yeah, I can watch. Like, I loved the 90s anime. I loved the manga version. I love the musical version. I love, you know, like it was the Crystal version was on point too. So even though I wasn't a big fan of Crystal season 3 animation, the fact that it was my favorite storyline made up for all of that. All right, so we just talked about our favorite arcs and seasons and which ones we would watch if there was one version we could watch. Lumi said Sailor Stars. Z said the Dark Kingdom arc across any iteration. And I said the S/Infinity arc across any iteration. So, you know, because we are avid Sailor Moon fans, we are very well aware of the music and the songs of the series that we have watched.
You know it.
So,
yes.
Which version of the show, which iteration of Sailor Moon, any iteration, has better songs?
Oh, I hate you for this.
Oh, goodness.
I'll go first.
Yeah, you go first.
Yeah, you go first.
You go first.
Okay, so I think... Okay, so I'm going to break this down for you guys, and maybe this will help inform your answers moving forward. So let's rank these down. So like from the most, like one, like the top has the best and the bottom has the least favorite or the least best song, something like that. So I would think, like, on the top, I would put, for number one, I'll probably say, I'll have to say the Bandai musicals would probably be the best when it comes to songs, just because of how long they've been running, as well as they have some really good image songs for the characters. And I think that was kind of a defining point for Sailor Moon music-wise. I'd say number two would be the 90s anime. There's a lot of good songs that came out of the 90s anime, especially out of Sailor Stars, but there have been some definitive themes and songs that have come out throughout every season. And number three, I would have to say PGSM. specifically because there are some songs that Minako sings throughout the show that are paramount to the show. There's also some character songs that appear in the live action. And an honorable mention for me would have to be the Nell K musicals, because even though and the reason why Nell K is kind of like, an honorable mention is because their songs were integrated into the story, and the dialogue was also sung as songs. So while they did have some standout like moments where they had like songs that they would sing, the songs were more integrated into the story, so it was really hard to single out those musical moments because it was pivotal to the story. And I'll leave that there, and I will pass. Okay, Z's laughing, so I'm gonna go with Z next.
Oh no! Oh dang it!
You don't dump for yourself, Z. You don't dump for yourself.
Oh goodness. Okay, I'll follow the format that you follow. So number one, I agree with Gigi. Bandai musicals, and I'm biased to the first stage because that's the first stage I had ever seen. That has to be top tier Sailor Moon music for me. Aside from a lot of the encore songs that they have, like La Moon and stuff, there's just so many beautiful songs that not only storytell, but they kind of stand alone, like how you were mentioning when it comes to Nelke stuff, like Double Moonlight Romance, Chasing After You. Like there's so many individual songs that you could pick out that just, they define moments, they define scenes, they define characters, and it's eloquent. It's so beautifully and eloquently done. You have songs that you can dance to, there's songs that you can cry to, and then there's songs that you just start clapping to, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love how they execute a lot of the Bandai Mu songs, with Double Moonlight Romance and Lost Soldier being two of my top faves from Bandai Mu. Two, I would have to say PGSM is second, just because I am a sucker for character/image songs. I think that's something that a lot of shows and things should really bring back, because I love songs that kind of give you an idea about the personality of character. But aside from the character songs, I also really love the instrumentation that they use within the show itself, like from the DJ Moon soundtracks that you can listen to. I love how all of the little instrumentals have names. Like I think Usagi's Fun Day is one of them. And I love instrumentation that when you listen to it, you can envision a scene. So I don't know the specific name of this particular theme, but the theme that plays whenever they're running and they're about to either call other senshi, or they're running and they're going to go get to a Yoma, that's one of my favorites. But I love instrumentation like that. Like I did band. I love instrumentation kind of stuff. 3, I might have to put Nelke musicals at 3, just because the songs, in my opinion, might not have been as impactful as the Bandai Muse. Like there's not a whole lot of songs that I could list off the top of my head that I'm like, oh heck yeah, aside from like I Know Starshine, Music of the Spheres. I don't know, to me there's not a lot of songs that like make me go ah within the Nelke as much as I love the Nelke. But I think the songs that they do use within the Nelke, and that they use even like outside of like the main 5 Nelke, like talking about the Nogi Muse and the Super Live, I think it's interesting storytelling. Whether it's through instrumentation, whether it's through songs where they're literally just talking to each other, like Wish or Nagai, which is within the first musical La Reconquista. I think it's cute. I think it's neat. And my honorable mention has to go to the 90s anime music. I think the background stuff's neat, and there's a few character songs that I like from the 90s anime, mainly sung by Usagi and Mamoru. I think they're really cute, especially Mamoru's character songs. I think his voice actor is Toru Furuya. That man can sing. He can sing really, really well. And I'm gonna leave it there before I go into even more detail about songs, because music is just one of my niches, like having studied music and stuff, so I could really go all in, but I'll stop there.
Okay. And what about you, Lumi?
Lord, I I ain't even ready.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't even know. Respectfully, I'd probably say the Japanese dub is definitely number one for me, which is surprising considering I grew up on the. You don't hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. But mostly for me, the first one is going to definitely be the Japanese dub. The song, a banger, right? Like the opening, everyone knows the opening, whether it's English or Japanese. But I feel like honestly, the Japanese one is better. And then you have Tuxedo Mirage. I forgot. I think it's called Anoki. I love that one. I love Anoki. I love Makanai. Makanai is probably like my favorite out of all of them. Cannot beat it. Cannot beat it. Out of all of the
Makanai slaps.
It does. And here's the thing. I have watched the musicals. I watched the first Bondi musical. I just watched it. I was able to get to watching it. And I don't know. Like respectfully, in my opinion, at the very least, like this is I'm not saying that it is the best. I'm not saying it's the best, but I personally prefer the Japanese dub from the 90s version music more. It just has so many bangers too, especially with Watashi Minari Takete. I'm probably not saying it right, but the only time I see the title was with the Japanese kanji. And I probably have to say my number 2 is BPSM. And I say that, with Seslavi, Here We Go, Usagi's Theme, and I believe Luna's theme is also my favorite. But I definitely have to say that's the second one, along with, their opening. I love that opening. It's so cute, with a good little number.
So cute.
And then it is so cute. And then I would probably have to say number 3 for me goes to, and me and Grayson's gonna tussle, is the 90s dub. And
why you gotta make it sound like it's adversarial? Like adversarial.
Power of love hater. You're just a hater over the power of love.
I'm not a hater.
Yes, you are. You are a hater.
If you love Power of Love, I support you in your
That's
love.
More power to you.
Yes, I support you. I support. Power of Love is a theme song that a lot of Deke fans like, and I'm not taking that away from you guys. It's just not a song that I like.
No, that's okay. I prefer Moon Revenge over Power of Love.
And
Moon
my thing is
Revenge?
my thing is my Power of Love, my Power of Love song from the Deke dub is Carry On. Like that was my Power of Love moment. So
Yeah.
I would always pick Carry On before I pick Power of Love. It was a definitive Deke song for me. So, and I think Power of Love tried to like capitalize on Carry On, and it wasn't a bop for me. But if it's a bop for you, I am all for it.
And listen, this isn't me like attacking you. This is like me just saying, you're a hater. Because I'm just fun at you on the live last night, like they were poking fun at me.
So much happened in this live, and I'm sad I missed it.
I'm saying, but I tell you, I swear, it doesn't matter if it's my comment section. It doesn't matter if it's my live. Power of Love comes up. So for me, it's like it just happens. I just know it's coming. So when you said Power of Love, I'm like, okay, there, here we go.
There goes. Here we go.
But no, I honestly, but while we're here talking about Power of Love really quick, I just want to say I do like Moon Revenge better than Power of Love, which is why the Japanese dub for like the soundtrack is like number 1 for me. I just included, I'm just putting myself. I know I don't have to, but I gotta say it. Power of Love, I'm just putting there because nostalgia, I grew up on it, of course. Does that mean it's like my absolute favorite out of all dubs? No. I also prefer the Japanese dub because nostalgia, But I would have to say like I said earlier, the Japanese dub, the PGSM, and that the the English dub, whether that be Clover Way or whether that be the D dub. It's just I love all the songs. Like I don't know, it's just all the songs and like all the different dubs and all the different, spaces that they're in, whether they're the musicals, the Nelky, the Sera, the Bandai musical, PGSM, Crystal. Honestly, I'm not even gonna hold you. I did not like the song. The only Crystal song that I liked was when they did the re-edition of Watashi ni Dari Sasute, and probably the first opening from season 1. I did not like any of the other songs. Oh wait, no, the ending song from season 1.
Can I raise you the character songs that they sang in Crystal? Because Ayan Dakagafu Futori Kakeru sang by Kenji, who plays
I will die on this hill.
This is news.
Or Come Rain Come Shine, sang by Kotono. Or Cherry Pie, sang by Jupiter.
This is news to me. I didn't even know they had.
Oh,
actually, I didn't even know they had character songs.
Oh yes.
And you know what? I am a little bit of a liar because I do like more songs from Crystal. Like with that ending with Uranus and Neptune, and then the first ending, and then I'm also a little bit of a liar. I did not like the first opening that much in season 1, but I did. I think all the songs that I loved were literally the ending songs. And that is so bad. But I don't care. Okay. The ending song for the first movie, and then season 2, the ending, I think that was called, and then season 1, the ending circle. But like I said, my top three will be the Japanese dub, PGSM, and then the English dub for the song. But I'm not even gonna hold you. I did not know there were character songs for Crystal, and I'm gonna have to do more research into that because
I got you.
Out.
There's some they released a whole album for the first season.
Oh my god!
Because the Generals have a character song that the 4 of them sing together.
The
they had that album. Yeah, they've actually been releasing character albums for most of the seasons, and I know the movies as well, because they have a character album or an album in general for the Eternal movie. Because all the Sentients, they have character songs for that. So if you ever want to know more Crystal songs, I'm here. I got you.
Hook me up. That's all I'm saying. Hook me up.
Well, this is a great segue into our next question, because we talked about the songs, but we want I definitely want to talk about which iteration of Sailor Moon had the best background music. And I'm going to start with this because I think that your comments about not knowing about the Crystal music kind of hits the nail on the head when it comes to instrumentation that Z was talking about too. So for me, Crystal ranks pretty low on my list when it comes to background music, because music was not as big as a proponent as it could have been in Crystal, in my opinion. And I think that also speaks to why a lot of people don't know about the image songs and stuff like that, because outside of the opening themes and the ending themes, they didn't really have the space or the opportunity to play character songs like that throughout the show, which was kind of like in-show promotion to buy the albums. They were just kind of releasing the albums with the image songs and stuff like that on there, because people are Sailor Moon fans, they'll buy the merchandise. But I do compared to the 90s anime, I feel specifically the Japanese, they didn't really tie in the music as well as they could have in Crystal Eternal, or even in Crystal Eternal, I mean. So and I think outside, the theme songs tend to be pushed a lot because they're being sang by famous groups. So it's Momoclo, they did Moon Pride, they did the opening for Crystal season 3, and they did Moon Color Shannon for Eternal.
They also sang Gecko.
Yes, and they also sang Gecko at the end of the first 2 seasons of Sailor Moon Crystal.
Yeah.
And outside of those instances, there wasn't really, and Chibiusa also had an ending song at the end of Crystal that I think also went over everybody's head too, because it's I don't think people really paying attention like that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to instrumentation and background music, and I'm kind of glad that you mentioned that, Z, is that I think the music plays a pivotal role in those visual cues. Like soundtrack is very important to television and movies. And I think that when you said, "Oh, I like the theme that they play in the background when they are running towards battle," I know exactly what song you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I think that Sailor Moon Crystal kind of like dropped the ball when it came to the music they have. And don't get me wrong, Crystal has some really good emotional cues. Like there's this music cue that they play, and it really stood out to me when the Outer Senshi were explaining to Sailor Moon how Sailor Saturn destroyed Silver Millennium, and there's this very sad violin music that was playing that really stuck out to me. That's what made me go and download the Crystal soundtrack, especially for the score, because I really liked that theme, and I liked the music that played when Usagi or Super Sailor Moon was telling Mamoru that she would be by his side in Eternal, even though he was sick. That was a very like that's on my top 25 on my iPod, because that's how much I listened to that song.
Nice.
But rank wise, I think that the 90s anime kind of like tops out the list when it comes to background music, because they had the same composer throughout the entire show. And he was iconic when it came to the music that he came up with and the instrumentation that he used throughout the 90s anime. So I mean, it speaks volumes to the level of instrumentation that this composer put into the 90s anime. And there are themes that will still like resonate with fans today. I think behind the 90s anime would have to be PGSM. I think it really took cues from the 90s anime when it came to instrumentation, and they had this composer that did it was amazing. There are specific cues that are played that you instantly know something's going down. And I think that honestly, it's like those are the only two that kind of like stand out to me. Bandai and Nelke musicals, even Nogi, are more known for their songs more than they are for their background music. And I think that, and even like, because I have all the musical soundtracks and I even have the background music, and even the background music are reprisal themes of existing songs. So it's like when, like, I think like during the Dracul arc, there is a specific theme, but it's a deep version of Last Change, which is Sailor Moon's Image song.
Yep.
So I think that, the musicals kind of like rank low on the list for me, because they're not really focused on background music. They're more focused on the actual songs more than anything else. Even though they have background music, it's a shadow in comparison to the song. So it's like I can't recall the only thing that I can recall from the musicals are Henshinless Soldiers, which is the transformation music for Sailor Moon.
Yep. That's a good one.
Yeah, and that's a really good one. But other than that, it's pretty, like there's only a few cues that I can recall from the musical that were pivotal moments for me. And Z, you're pretty good. You're pretty like, I could tell you're itching, so go ahead.
Okay.
She's ready.
You smell the
You're
antsiness
correct.
from G.
You're correct. I'm itching. So number one for me, no contest, is PGSM. I am a sucker for instrumentation, and I'm more so a sucker for instrumentation that can help tell a story, because I believe that music is another form of storytelling and telling a narrative. It can enhance the story that's already happening. It can contrast the story. Like, music can do so many things. And I think the music in PGSM, whether it is like the princess harp that plays, which is so melodramatic, and you could do a whole conversation about that harp music. Or songs where you're just sitting and Usagi's eating lettuce or cabbage because she's training her body for resistance stuff. I think each little tidbit of a song that they play within PGSM is impactful, and it's cute. It's very cute, and it fits the tone of the show. I think all of the little instrumentation that they use fits the tone of the show very well. So that's number one for me. Number two has to be the 90s. I love the way that 90s music sounds within 90s anime, and Sailor Moon is no exception to that. I love a lot of the background music that they use within the 90s. It's very, like, it feels nostalgic. Like, it feels like when you put on one of the songs, you could just sit and unwind and just relax, genuinely relax. And it gives this old-timey feel, but not like in a bad way. Like, it's a very reminiscent kind of feel to me. And then third, I have to put Crystal at 3, just because I feel like the music within Crystal is more orchestral. Because I've downloaded all of season 1's instrumentation, and the music is much more orchestral than I'd say it is within its PGSM and 90s anime counterparts. Like Tuxedo Mask's theme or Mamoru's theme, for example, it's a lot of piano and it's very soft, but I feel like even within the notes that's played, it tells the story of Mamoru. And I think that's it. It also kind of goes to show that, like, music doesn't have to be like a butt ton of things sounding and making a whole lot of sounds. It could be like 1 to 2 instruments, because that could tell a story just as much as like a whole band can. And I think Crystal's music is very simplistic in nature, which is not a bad thing. But I think even it has its build-ups, like to the final battle music, for example, that plays. It's very like, They use a lot of choral stuff. They use a lot of
vocalizations
stuff.
for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely pick up on the vocalizations for sure.
So it's Crystal is simplistic and orchestral in nature to me, but that's not a bad thing. So that would be my top 3, and I agree with putting like the musicals at the bottom, just because they're more sing-songy. Like the focus is more on the songs. There isn't a lot of background music going on. If there is, I would see it more so within like the Bandai Muse, like little things playing in the background. And I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna put a pin in that for now.
And what about you, Lumi?
I'm not even gonna hold you. I got caught up in Z's response again. I forgot the question.
So we're talking about the background music in the iterations of Sailor Moon. So basically from your top 3, like who do you think has the best background music, and then go from there.
Z gonna love me for this. PGSM definitely at number 1. Definitely at number 1. It's just, when you think of like it's a specific thing where it's like you know exactly which one. I'm butchering it, but it's like it's that specific theme where it's like something like monumental happens to Usagi, or like something heartfelt happens, that theme plays, and it's just like, oh, I don't know. It's like it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's like it gets I'm stuttering a lot. Freaking pretzel. It puts like a certain feeling in your mind and in your body, and it's just like it makes you feel all warm inside, and I absolutely love it. And then like how Z was saying, this is gonna be number 2. Crystal is my number 2, because while the music is very instrumental, and while I did also not really like the music of Crystal all that much, I did love the background music. Because like he was saying, Mamoru it's very soft. It has a piano tone. It's like it's a piano, but it's like it has a very soft tone to it. And I love the orchestral like musical background, especially because I'm an orchestra kid. I did orchestra literally from 4th grade graduating. And so I love the music that is used in Crystal, and the different tones that they use for it, and the different backgrounds, and how it's used in each scene, and like how any background music can set a tone. But I feel like Crystal does a really really good job with it, especially PGSM. As for a third one,
Oh.
I don't know. I feel like those are probably like the only two that I really like come to mind that I really love, honestly. I mean, the 90s, no, I say the 90s a lot because like the musicals do really, really good with it too. But at the same time, it's like, I feel so bad for not mentioning musicals, especially because I only just got into them. Like I just finished the first round I won, like that I just started off with that one. So I am gonna have to say it, and I am sorry.
That's okay.
Because honestly,
yeah, you're good.
Okay, because I feel like when I like watch more of the musicals, my answer will definitely change. But for right now, I'm gonna have to go with the 90s, 70s, 90s as my third. But like I said, like I don't really have a third favorite. It's just like PGSM and then Crystal are just like my favorite in terms of the background because they do a really, really good job with it.
Okay, and I just want to like make an honorable mention for the Deke dub because they were really good about they took a Japanese theme song and made a very catchy English theme song out of that. But I think that there are some cues in the Deke dub that evoked certain mentality. I mean, a certain mentality or certain emotions. So I think that there's definitely some standout themes when it comes to the Deke dub. But the one thing that kind of like got me about the Deke dub, because a lot of people are like, Deke dub is superior, it has superior music, and it's just like, compared to Crystal and the Japanese version, the Deke dub ranks pretty low on the list because it was literally one guy with a keyboard coming up with this music,
Yeah.
and the music was good, but Crystal and the Japanese anime, even PGSM, had actual orchestras, and they were releasing like albums of this music, whereas the background music for the Deke dub was very limited. It was kind of like one note for me, like so it was very one note for me. I think that it definitely could have built on the themes that it already had, but I think that for the most part it was in line with Power Rangers of like the first season of Power Rangers, where it's like they had those solid themes that resonated with that first season, but it didn't go beyond that. So that's why I wanted to make an honorable mention for that. So we talked about favorite characters, transformations, costumes, seasons, music, and since we talked about all of that and you've had time to ruminate on some of these things, what is your favorite Sailor Moon song from Sarah Miyu, the 90s anime, PGSM, and Sailor Moon Crystal / Eternal? So one song from each iteration. I know you won't have a lot to go off of, Lumi, but if you
I was gonna say you just did dirty. Joking, of course.
So I'll go first, just to kind of and you guys can kind of go from there. Okay. So Sarah Miyu, I honestly, there's a lot of Sarah Miyu songs that I like. So if I was gonna go with one song,
oh Lord,
one song from Sarah Miyu, I would have to say Chronos Guardian from Petit Échange, sung by Sailor Pluto. I think it was a very powerful image song for Sailor Pluto. It is definitely a standout for me. A song from the 90s anime, and this can be Deke or the Japanese version, Lumi. But I think from the 90s anime, I would have to say my favorite song is Anata no Seijinai, which is It's Not Your Fault, by Emi Shinohara, who plays Sailor Jupiter. That's probably like my favorite Sailor Jupiter image song from the anime. And I can listen, it's very jazzy, very mellow. I can listen to that song like all day long. PGSM, I would have to say Romance, by Ayaka Komatsu, who plays Sailor Venus. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite songs from the show. And Sailor Moon Crystal / Eternal. I'm kind of torn, but I'm gonna go with the Tuxedo Mask closing song for season 3. I would have to say that that's probably like my favorite song from Crystal.
Okay.
And I'll give you one honorable mention, and I'll say from Eternal, Moon Color Shainon was really good too. And I'm gonna pass it to Lumi because I want to hear these answers.
Okay, I was hoping it was gonna be me. Okay, so starting off with the musicals, just to get that out of the way. This is mostly Z's fault. I'm gonna say I Know Starshine or I Know Sunshine.
Is it my fault?
Yeah, it's your fault because you always humming it, you always posting it. I'm like,
I don't know what you mean.
I could literally go right now on your page and just see how many times you've posted it. And that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, you just got that stuck in my head. And I want you to know that it is 100% thoroughly your fault.
Good.
Case in point. Next one. 90s, whether that be from the Japanese or the English stuff, don't come for me because you might be a little surprised. It's Search for Your Love. Hard. And it was a hard choice between that one, Makanai, and Tuxedo Mirage. And The Power of Love, of course. And Moon Revenge. I was trying to figure out, oh my god, I have to choose between all of this. What the hell do I pick? And I was like listening to all of them, and I was trying to figure out what hit the most. And honestly, it was Search for Your Love. You know, just because of that scene with Seiya and, you know, how passionate they are. Like, I just love them. And then if I have to say from PGSM, Beth Levy, hands down, always, 100%. Minako, she ate that. She was so cute with that. I do not know the actor's name, and I feel so horrible for that, and I'm going to fix that. But I do love the way that she put her voice into that and the different, you know, vocal ranges that she uses for it. Which, you know, there isn't a lot, but I still do love it. And if I had to say with Crystal, I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna be a little cheater. Okay, don't come for me, alright? From Eternal, it's Watashi ni Naritashi. You will always hear that song in my mouth. And then from Crystal, it's Gecko Moonbow.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Those are my favorites.
Tell us what you got.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So, from the musicals, which is incredibly hard because there's so many different eras of musicals and I can't just pick one singular song. But if I had to pick one, it's Double Moonlight Romance. All the way. It is a beautifully, eloquently done song. I feel like it invokes like the romantic vibes, for lack of better words, that Sailor Moon has. It's so beautiful. I won't go into it, but it's so beautiful. The Moonlight Romance. That's my favorite musical song. For PGSM, I love Friends. I think it's a really nice song, and there's little tidbits that I hadn't heard before when I've been re-listening to it, and it makes me cry harder because it's like, oh, like it's such an encompassing song. I feel like it's a really good song that kind of conveys everything that happens within the show. So Friend is my favorite from PGSM. From the 90s anime, it's Tuxedo Mirage. And I'm gonna leave it at that. From Crystal, since we're differentiating Crystal and Eternal. I don't really have a favorite for Eternal, I'm gonna be honest. But from Crystal, it's A and Dakagath with Oriwa Kakeru. Like, Pseudo Mask's ending song is elite, and I will never forget waiting for that full song to be released when they did that ending. Like, that's my favorite. And honorable mention has to go to Lost Soldier. Because that is, in my opinion, the Seira Mew anthem. It doesn't matter what version, like literally, it does not matter what version of the musical you watch, you will find that song.
Yes.
Because I think they've done it in every single, aside from like the Shining Tokyo Cafe place, I think they've done that in every single version of Seira Mew. Like even at the musical festival, they sang Lost Soldier. So that's an honorable mention. And I'm gonna leave it there.
Okay, so keeping with the songs, so we talked about background music. Is there, and I'm not going to say you had to list one for each iteration like we did for the songs, but is there a specific piece of background music that just says something to you from any iteration of Sailor Moon that you just like love? And I'll start with this because I'm not going to like name a whole bunch of them, but I think that's a couple of a standout background music for me is called The Melody That Overflows from Massive Troubles. And it's a PJSM music piece. And it plays at very pivotal moments, very emotional moments, like when Sailor Mars finds out, like when she's grieving, when Minako passes away, when she has to fight Endymion at the end of PGSM. It played when Jupiter tried to sacrifice herself. It was just a very emotional piece of music that I just love to this day. And do you know that I had to wait for the Moonlight Real Girl Music CD box to come out before I downloaded every DJ Moon trying to find this song, and I did not get it until that box came out. So I think that's why it stands out to me, because not only did I love the music so much, but I literally had to wait so long to get it. And I will open it up to either one of you to answer next.
Z, you go next.
Dang, okay. I was like, oh, Lumi's gonna make me go, I can feel it. I think one song that stands out to me, I don't know the name of it, and it might have been something that used that G, but it's the song, I remember it playing, it's like a flute melody that plays in PGSM, and it's like, and then like the piano comes at the end. That has to be it for me, because it's like a song that I feel plays a lot when there's moments of solitude when it comes to any of the characters. Because I kind of envision Ami knitting like the sweaters and stuff that she knitted, or when Usagi's like sitting by herself reflecting, or Mamoru when he's staring off into whatever he wants to stare off into. I have to say that one. That one, I feel like that one is like my theme music sometimes when I'm sitting by myself and I'm thinking, and I hear that playing in the background.
Okay. Yeah. What about you, Lumi?
Yeah, it's your turn.
You know what? The amount of salt in that one sentence. Wow. Okay. But I want to say the song that probably sticks out to me. Oh, I can think of it. So you know that it's in Sailor Stars. You know that song where that scene where Usagi and Seiya are on the rooftop and he finally learns that Mamo is Bro has kicked the bucket.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. Same.
Yeah, that song from that specific scene. That when he asks, like, am I not good enough? That song just stuck out to me so much that, like, if I hadn't seen Sailor Stars, right? If I hadn't seen Sailor Stars and I were to, like, choose a background song that, like, stuck out to me, it would probably be when, who is it? Usagi is like, she lost all of her friends, and Rei is the only one left. And that song plays. That would be what sticks out to me. But after Sailor Stars, no, it's that specific scene where they're on the rooftop and that song plays, and he asks, or they ask, am I not good enough?
Okay.
Bro, I cried. I couldn't stop crying. I was crying for like a good solid 10-15 minutes. I was so upset. I was distraught.
Not distraught.
I was emotional, right? Bro had me blinking away my tears. Like, that shit burned. It did burn. It hurt.
Quietly
It hurt
sliding
so bad.
down the wall.
I still have a video of that. I hope you know that.
Oh, Lord.
I need that. So we've been talking about like some of our favorites and stuff like that. So next question is, what is your most liked version of Sailor Moon, and what is your least liked version of Sailor Moon? And I'm gonna keep it in those two. I'm gonna keep it in those two categories because there's so many iterations, so many dubs to really choose from. So I don't really want us to have to go through every iteration or every version. So I kind of like want to keep it at your most liked version and your least liked version. And I'll start it off just to give you an idea of like what I'm talking about. So I would have to say like my most liked version of Sailor Moon would have to be the Japanese 90s anime. I think because it has such a definitive impact on me as a person, and music wise, story wise, and stuff like that. I think that's probably like a standout for me. Oh, this least one though is tough. Because it's like, even though I say it's like least liked, I would probably have to say like it would probably be like a version that I would put off watching. Like I wouldn't like it's not to say that I don't like it. It's not to say that I hate it or anything like that. So I don't want people to. It's like, definitely take it with a grain of salt. It's not that deep. It just gives you an idea of our perspectives and stuff like that. So it's like 90s Japanese anime is definitely at the top for me. And I'm probably gonna take a page out of Lumi's book and kind of cheat on this. But I honestly will not. I like pretty much all versions of Sailor Moon, but I probably like if I'm gonna put it off, I'm not gonna. If this is the last thing I'm gonna watch, it's going to be an English version of the show. I will put it off. I will put off watching it to the last minute. Like I will not. Like I will watch it eventually, but it won't be anytime soon. And I'll let Lumi answer next.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to say the same thing. Honestly, I was literally going to say the same thing, and then you said it, and I was just like, oh, whoop, what here. But no, for real, like, if I were to start off with the least, it would be the dick dub. And I say that because even though I grew up on it, even though it's nostalgic for me, it just has so many issues. Like, it has so many things that I hate about it, and it's just like, if I had to rewatch it for the first time, or if I had to like choose like which I would watch for the first time or to rewatch, it would definitely not be the deep dub. Like, it would not be my first choice, like, at all. Because I want to experience Sailor Moon in its full entirety, and you can't really do that with the deep dub. You can't experience the whole story that's really happening. You can't experience the whole mood, you know? But I feel like if I were to choose like my top favorite that I would absolutely rewatch wholeheartedly, it'd be the 90s Japanese dub. Because like I said, you get the full thing right there for you. You get the mood, you get the tone, you get everything, you get the full story, you know? And even though it has filler, even though it has all those bits to like extend the story, it has like stuff in there that's not even canon to the manga, like L and on, you know?
Right.
It still has so much to it that just brings it together. And I'm gonna bring in an honorable mention, and it's gonna be the PGSM. because it was a little bit of a hard choice for me between PGSM and the 90s anime, because I've rewatched both so many times. Like I've probably rewatched PGSM more, but that was back when they had the whole playlist on YouTube for both versions, but they don't anymore, unfortunately. But if I were to go back to that time and choose what to rewatch for the first time, or just to rewatch in general, it would definitely be the 90s anime.
Okay, that makes sense. And to kind of like add on to your honorable mention, especially about like the Deke dub, and I don't want our Deke dubs fans or their Cloverway fans to feel some type of way about this, but there are some key and pivotal specific moments that I love in the Deke dub and in the Cloverway dub that I felt were executed excellently. And I think that while I may not want to watch the show like how I had to back in the day, I will go back and watch certain moments of the show because they were so cool. Like I will always go back to the first season of Deke Dug to hear Terry Hawk say that I'm Sailor Moon, Princess of the Moon Kingdom, and your worst nightmare. Like,
yes.
So it's just like I and I think that's like I think that people tend to like lump Deke Dub into this, dumpster fire of a mess, and it wasn't that. I think they had limited material to work with and a lot of editing that they had to work with, and even with that limitation, they still shined in some of the moments, and there were some really powerful performances that came out of that show. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people still cling onto it. I mean, this show, the Deke Dub specifically, is over a decade old, like 20, 30 years old. And I think that, and I think that the fact that people still call them Sailor Scouts and they still call them Serena and Darian and stuff like that goes to show how much of it goes to show how much of an impact that it had. Okay. It goes to show how much of an impact it had on those individuals. And for me, it would be remiss of me, Moonlight Justice as a whole, or anybody else to take away from those fans of that show, because it just like people were so emotional over hearing Search for Your Love in the new Sailor Moon Cosmos trailer, people feel that same way about the and people feel the same way about Power of Love. So like for me, it's like it may not be as impactful or as important to me, but it is important to somebody else. And I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to start Moonlight Justice, is the fact is that you don't have to, excuse my language, shit on other people to get your preferences and your opinions across, because what you may not like about that particular iteration, it's somebody's joy, it's somebody else's joy, and we don't ever want to stomp on that. And so it's like, I think that one of the things that, we are doing as part of Moonlight Justice is that we're providing a space where it's like, you're allowed to love these things, and you're allowed to love your ships and your favorite music or your favorite version of Sailor Moon without it being a divisive, controversial thing. And I think that that's a very important message that we're trying to relay. So I'm glad that you kind of mentioned that. And with that, I'm going to get off the soapbox now. And I'm going to pass it to Z. Most liked version and least liked version. And, like we said, take it with a grain of salt, people. It's not definitive.
Okay, I'll keep it short and sweet. Most liked, PGSM. Least liked, 90s anime.
Okay.
Yeah. Not to say that like there's stuff I don't like about the 90s anime, but
no,
like,
I just have a quick question. Okay. I just want to know, because I'm a little curious. Okay. Which one are you talking about specifically?
I mean the 90s anime as a whole.
Oh.
Yeah.
surprisingly
like when it comes to like when we're talking about like rewatching stuff, that is the version that I watch the least. Like if anything, I watch like certain episodes out of the
Right.
whole. Like I wouldn't binge it like I would PGSM, for example. Or,
All
like,
200 episodes.
Yeah, because I've watched shows that have like a butt ton of episodes, and I don't mind binging them, like Detective Conan. But the '90s anime is just, I watch it when I feel like it. I guess that makes sense.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
That makes sense, and that's perfectly valid. I was just wondering if you meant like as a whole,
Oh,
or if you were like
yeah,
more
like a specific
specifically, 'cause you just
version.
said that 90s anime. I was like, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. So speaking of, the 90s anime and Crystal, which version of the show has better animation? And I will kick this one. I'll kick this one off for you guys. So it's a very tough line to follow, because the one thing I liked, and I think the way that I answer this will probably like help you guys, because I don't want this to be like one is superior than the other. I think it's just a matter of preference and kind of like details. And so I'm kind of like gonna like dissect this in a Z type style. So the one thing I like about the 90s anime is that you could tell the difference in the animation. Like it wasn't a consistent style throughout the entire show. There were specific animators with a specific style that did these episodes. So back in the day, like there were people that had favorite animators, and sometimes their animators kind of like dictated like what episodes that they liked because their animator animated that episode. And I think that it definitely was like Sailor Moon animation back in the 90s was groundbreaking for what it was. And the character design was handed from one animator to the next. So it was like for the first 2 seasons, it was Kazuko Tadano, who would come back to do Eternal and Cosmos. Ikuko Ito, who was my favorite animator, did the character design for S and Supers, and Katsumi Tamagai did the character design for Sailor Stars. And I think it's just like, I think that those individuals, those animators, like had a very niche style that they drew in, that like it's kind of like almost like being like an artist. Like a Beyonce song when you hear a Beyonce song, or a John Legend song, or a Lady Gaga song. I think that that's how that animation was kind of like spoken to back in the day. Like all the movies were done by the Sailor Moon movies were done by were character designed by Hisashi Kagawa, with the exception of Kazuko Tadano, who did the character design for the R movie. I think it's very interesting to see the dynamics in the 90s animation compared to Crystal. Crystal tried to go for that Precure consistency when it comes to animation. So I know that when they first started, Crystal had a very, very strong detail and animation style, which is what attracted me to Crystal in the first place, was the fact that it wasn't like the 90s animation, and it had a very distinct style similar to the manga. So when I saw the trailer and the first episode, I had really high hopes for the animation because it was so detailed and it paid homage to the 90s anime, right? Mm-hmm. But then I think because of demand and the urgency to get this out within a tight deadline, because remember, in the 90s anime, you were getting one episode a week on Saturdays in Japan. So compared to that, and then nowadays where it's like you're literally getting batches of episodes in one sitting. So I think that increase in demand to get it out now kind of affected the production value for Crystal, which is why the animation kind of like ebbed and flowed throughout the first 2 seasons. Crystal season 3 kind of like took that input and kind of like turned it on its head, and they came out with a different animation style, which was more consistent. But I also feel like it was like not as high in production value as like the first episode of Crystal season 1. And then take again that input again, the production values went up, and now we have the movies where we have more details, eye details, coloring, more graphics and stuff like that. So I think it's like, and I think the evolution of Crystal into Eternal and Cosmos kind of like shows like how much input is taken in by fans now, whereas compared to the 90s anime where fans were just itching to have a new episode come out, and they weren't complaining about things like, oh, the animation's not consistent, and the demand was, you were at the mercy of the anime company. Like, you had to wait for them to get the product done. It wasn't a matter of trying to get it all out in a timely manner because of the way streaming is now. And I know that was a long-winded answer, so I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna get out the box again. And I'm going to turn it over to Z because I feel like she has some notes for me.
Yeah, you started talking about streaming stuff, and my mind went, "Ooh, this is my area of expertise." I guess talking about animation, I love how you analyzed the 90s anime. I have to agree. I think the color scheme, because I think colors definitely play a factor into how things are animated. You just want to make sure that everything is looking nice, for lack of better words. I think the color schemes are really, really nice in 90s anime. Everything's very fluid. It's like I mentioned before, it's nostalgic. Like when I watch the 90s anime, it's definitive. You can tell it's from the 90s, and I love that. I think that's really, really cool. I don't have too much to say on that. Crystal, on the other hand, it went through a lot of different art styles and art changes, and that's something I'm personally used to because there's a lot of shows that I grew up watching where season 1 had an art style, and then it went to something entirely different for the second season. So that was something that I personally didn't mind because it's like, oh, it's just kind of like this show. But I do like the detailing that they did in the first season, and I liked how it came out of the manga, essentially, when it comes to the color scheme of the fugus, the background designs of the transformation sequences. Like everything was detailed, and everything, like every stroke, every like little cell animation or whatnot, it was there for a reason, and it was intentional. That's the word. It was intentional. And then season 2 was season 2, and then I'm stream of conscious thinking. And then season 3, I agree with how you said it kind of tried to pick up based off of the comments and critiques that were given based upon the first 2 seasons, and I feel like it didn't get to the bar, honestly, till Eternal and Cosmos, because I think by then they really had their style solidified, and they kind of, like, they're sticking with it. And you started talking about streaming, so I'm going to talk about streaming for a second, because I remember watching Crystal when it came out. I'm not sure, because it came out every week, if I'm not mistaken. I'd watch it like every Monday at 10:30 in the morning.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So
yes.
I'm not entirely sure how it works when it comes to, episodes were being made and produced at the time, because I'd like to imagine that they had all the episodes done and they were just releasing them in a linear format. We're now in a more non-linear age of things, which is why we have Cosmos and Eternal. Oh my goodness, I'm not gonna dwell too long on that. But I think I lean a bit more towards the '90s anime, just a smidge.
Yeah, and just to kind of like add like a little note to the Crystal animation, the and this relates to any anime. It's not just specific to Sailor Moon, because Bleach is going through a whole reanimation process right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
They're like
yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. And I'll make this point and I'll let you go ahead with that. But I think that when Sailor Moon Crystal first came out, it was like literally watching a TV airing of the show. So that it was full of errors and animation mistakes. And even like back in the 90s, we had like even the X-Men cartoon had its wonky animation moments when it first aired for the first time. But on the back end, Sailor Moon Crystal, when they started releasing the Blu-rays of Crystal, they were correcting it on the back end. So when the first 2 seasons of Sailor Moon Crystal came out, there's a website dedicated to showing the comparisons between the first released version of Sailor Moon Crystal and the Blu-ray version of Sailor Moon Crystal. And so there's a lot of corrections. Granted, they didn't correct everything, but there's a lot of animation corrections to the show, which I do appreciate them doing. And it also shows the difference because I think Hulu and Netflix both have Crystal on their platforms. But the distinct difference between the two is Netflix has the first airings of Crystal, while Hulu has the Blu-ray version.
Huh.
So people are going to watch Crystal on Netflix and they're going to see what it looked like when it first came out, whereas people on Hulu are seeing the finished Blu-ray product. So I think that's also worth noting as well.
It's interesting. Oh, were you going to let me have the floor for a moment?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna add that like we're kind of in this age of a lot of anime shows, what have you, getting rebooted and getting like new animation styles and stuff. Because you talked about Bleach, I was gonna bring up Fruits Basket, because Fruits Basket got a reboot and it got 3 whole seasons, and the art style within Fruits Basket is it's drastic from the 2001 anime. But it closely, I feel like it closely resembles the manga in a thing. So I think Sailor Moon Crystal was at least one of the animes in a way that kind of started pivoting and ushering this eventual era of all these shows getting reboots and getting their stories fully retold. Because I think the last anime I can think of off the top of my head that did that is like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Because a lot of shows just weren't really doing that. It was kind of, you got your 2 seasons and that's it. And then Sailor Moon Crystal comes out and it's like, ooh. So I think that's something to take note of as well.
Right.
That's all I had to say.
Okay. And Lumi, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, I want to say maybe in terms of animation, I want to say that like, I'm gonna go with Crystal on this one. And I say Crystal because I remember when the first teasers for Crystal came out. I remember like, when the Twitter announcement came out. I remember when the music video came out. I remember all of that. I was there for that. And I was there when it first came out. I was like, ooh, this is nice. Like, I really liked it. And one of the reasons why I was so for professional animation was how pretty it was, And when I first saw Crystal, I was also first on getting to the manga. So I saw like how Usagi's hair was done, and I saw like how the details were done. And I was like, oh my god, this is literally so pretty. And for what? And I feel like I'm honestly kind of sad because the way that they progressed with the animation, like you guys had said, they were trying to get their footing. It did not help that, the fans were being a little judgmental. Like they were being, maybe not even judgmental, but they were being a little harsh in my opinion. And I feel like it's going to raise a couple of controversies, but I do feel like they were being a little harsh, especially because these were people who did not have their hands on Sailor Moon in the first place. And yes, they did bring back some people, but they originally did not, like as a whole collectively, did not originally have their hands on like the original Sailor Moon. And I feel like if they had stuck with the animation for the first season, right, and if they just corrected it, it honestly would have been fine. You know, I think fans would have been happy. I think it was just the animation errors, and I think it's the fact that it was just CGI that they just did not like. Which I feel like when you look at, like you said, like reboots of anime now, like for example, we're Trigun into this, and how Trigun's new reboot is CGI and how well they did. I feel like if Crystal was able to expand more on the CGI that they had did, it could have been better. Was the animation in season 1 perfect, especially, you know, with the transformation scenes? No, it was not. But, you know, they were getting there, you know? And then, you know, when they eventually got to season 3, we don't talk about season 2. We're not talking about it. When you talk about season 3, you can start to see where they're like, okay, they're starting to fully, like, instead of dipping their toe in the water, they're fully dipping their whole leg in there, you know? And then, you know, they come up with the final product of their animation style and Eternal, and it's just like, yeah, that's it, that's their style. And now you see Cosmos, and it's like, yeah, they need to stand more on that, and that's their style. But I feel like, honestly, Crystal could have done so much more if I honestly, and I'm tagging the fans for this one because I did not like how, you know, originally, you know, it's always the animation company gives it to you and you just gotta take it, you know? But this time it was in reverse. Like the fans were just like, bam, 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 coming for the animation company, both in English and in, you know, Japanese. Just from all sides. Yeah, they did. And they ended up listening to them, and it just went over. But I will say that, like, if none of that happened, and if, you know, they just let the animation company be, it would have been just fine. They really would have been just fine. We would have gotten something better than, you know. But, you know, I am going to stick with Crystal on this one, because Crystal was very pretty. So, that's my answer.
Okay.
I agree.
I agree, and I think it's very well said. And honestly, I think that Cosmos and Eternal kind of, you know, speak to me where it's like, if you execute with excellence, I don't think you can ever go wrong. And I think, you know, with Crystal kind of like being a rush job to try to meet like fan demand, and who knows what type of production deadlines they had they had kind of like really like stuck to like a decent schedule and actually put some, you know, elbow grease into the production value, I think that we would have gotten something similar to like, and that's also taking into account that they brought on a character designer that was from the first season. The animators that animated the show in the 90s are still working. It's not like they retired. Hisashi Kagawa, who did the S and Supers movie, he did what was it? Fresh Precure. And Katsumi Tamigai, like he did Precure 5 and Precure 5 Go-Go. And his style is like both of their styles are still distinctive and indicative of when they first started with Sailor Moon. So the fact that, you know, that Toei, for whatever reasons, decided not to pay homage further by bringing on people that knew Sailor Moon in and out. Hisashi Kagawa still does Sailor Moon art to this day, and it still looks as good as it did when he drew it back in the 90s. And that was his first anime working. So it's like the fact that, you know, it's like I wish that there was a little bit more. And granted, I know there's new talent out there. I know they probably want to focus on bringing in
like new fans and stuff.
New fans, new talent. You know, bringing in those artists that worked on Precure. I think that is also like one of the reasons. It's like I think there could have been a better balance between the new and the old. just like they brought back Kotono Mitsubishi, I don't see why they couldn't have brought back those animators in some capacity, even if it was consulting, you know? So I thought that was very interesting. So we're getting a little bit over time, so I know we're gonna have to wrap this up. So we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. We have like a few more talking points. So we're gonna be pretty fast about this. So 15, one-word answer. I want to know what Sailor Moon hot take you are looking forward to discussing on the podcast, and I will start with Lumi.
Sayusa fans.
What's that?
Sayusa fans. I am looking forward to the discourse that is going to be going on. So let me tell you, the pot is hot. And I say that as someone who ships both Mama Usa and Sayusa. I just know what's coming. Because it's going to be hot. He's going to be hot. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Okay. What about you, Z?
Mamoru Fanon versus Mamoru Cannon.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Like write that down. JK, write it down.
Write it down! Right now.
Oh my God.
So I feel like there's a common thread here, but I'm going to give you guys two that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the I guess it's like, let me think about this one. Give me 1 second. Okay, so yes, I want to demystify the misconception of Mamoru's age, specifically in the 90s anime. And I also want to tackle, and that ties in specifically not only to his characterization, but also his relationship with Usagi, which also plays into Seiya Usa. I also want to talk about Chibiusa / Black Lady and the misconception of the Electra complex that she exhibits. I think this is the case when you try to take on complex and nuanced like characteristics or tropes and try to simplify them in such a way where it comes off as inappropriate or cringy. And it reflects on the creator in a sense where it's just like, I think, and it tends to, when it gets watered down, it misconstrues the intent of the author. And I think that's kind of like what's happening. And so, and just to provide some clarification for our audience, is that we understand why some people feel the way they feel about some of the topics that we talked about as far as hot takes and controversy. And it's not to say that you are wrong. It is not to say that your opinion is not valid. We just want to be able to discuss in such a way and bring facts to the table to kind of support our perspective on these hot takes and controversies, because I think and Lumi touched on this, that there's a lot of discourse when it comes to some of these takes. Some people are very passionate about like their Seiya Usa ship, and they'll fight to the death for it. They'll die on that hill that they believe that Usagi and Seiya belong together, and that's fine. I have no issue with that whatsoever. But I think that with any opinion or preference, and I've stated this before, you don't have to tear down people that have a preference that's different or opinion that's different than your own to get your point across. And that's what we're trying to say. It's not to say that the Seiya Usa fans are wrong or the people that feel some type of way about Mamoru are wrong, but we feel like if we provide you with a different perspective from our understanding, supported by factual information and canon, that we hope that you'll be able to see things a different way, not necessarily change your opinion, but you should be able to say, oh, I never thought of it that way. You're right. Or I can see it. I can see where you're coming from. I don't have to, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can understand where you're coming from. And that's honestly the ultimate message that I think we would like you to walk away with, is a different perspective, a different take, and a better understanding, not necessarily taking anything away from you. So I hope that provides some clarity as to why we talk. Like, we're not trying to, we want to stir the pot, start some controversy in the community. It's like, no, we want to take a lot of those misconceptions and rumors and headcanons and kind of bring some more clarity and understanding and facts behind it to help give you a better understanding and perspective on it. Okay, so one shot, and so this ties into our next question, is what do you hope to achieve with this podcast? And I think that from my previous answer, I'm going to kind of like tack on to that. Like, it's we are not trying to be the know-it-alls of the Sailor Moon community. Like, there's still stuff that we are learning today about Sailor Moon. And honestly, this is a great way for us to come together to share that information, to share our own perspectives. And if you have been listening this far into this 2.5 hour podcast, you can understand that we all have our own preferences and views, and that none of them are alike, and the similarities are there, but they're not, like, we're not all coming off of this sameness or this oneness when it comes to Sailor Moon. We all have our different opinions, and we have our own perspectives, and we have jobs or hobbies that align in such a way that gives us a different view. So what I hope that you take away from this podcast, as I said earlier, is that you just have a different perspective, a different respect for Sailor Moon in general. And I will hand it to Lumi to answer next. What do you hope to achieve from this podcast?
I honestly hope to bring like more.
Oh wait, pause.
Sorry.
Yeah, we lost you completely. So.
You're good. I just had a phone call. I honestly hope to bring more solidarity to the community, because while I do like to say the Sailor Moon is a very accepting, a very welcome community, there is a lot of discourse in the community, and it is very torn into. And I say torn into, and I know you know what task that I'm talking about. But I want more, more solidarity. I want there to be, honestly, more Sailor Moon lovers, because while I'm not saying that everyone has to love Sailor Moon more, I know there's people that like Sailor Moon more, but or like Sailor Moon, but I just want there to honestly be like more appreciation for it, like more information about it. Because not everyone knows about Sailor Moon, or not everyone knows that like everything that comes with Sailor Moon, or all the different stuff within it. Because I didn't even know until I had met G and you that there were musicals for Sailor Moon. Like, I just want there to be more information, more topics, more talking about it, more love for it, all the good stuff.
Okay. And what about you, Z?
Well, I agree with both of y'all with what you have said previously. I hope that this podcast, there we go, for one, brings a sense of unity when it comes to the Mooney community, whether it be in podcast form, on TikTok, on Instagram, just wherever fandom spaces occur when it comes to Sailor Moon. And I also hope that people can walk away learning one new thing, because like Lumi had mentioned, I didn't know that there were musicals. And I know we're going to be talking about different iterations of Sailor Moon within this podcast, so I hope that people can walk away being like, oh, I didn't know that there's this thing that's out there. Let me do a little bit more research and find out more about said thing. So a sense of unity, being able to gain a bit of knowledge from this podcast, and hopefully walking away with a little bit of a smile after listening to this podcast, feeling some kind of joy. Like, that was so great. Can't wait for the next episode. Finger guns.
Nice.
Yes.
So there are the Sailor Moon community has a lot of notable content creators and fans, and I want you guys to name one or two, if you have three, notable content creators or fans that you would like to invite to Moonlight Justice to talk with us. And I will start with Z.
Okay. One is Vicky Vane. I love Vicky Vane so much. She's a well-known wig commissioner, and I know her for being the person that you can commission Usagi wigs from, and learning like the different types of styling techniques for Usagi wigs. She's also been cosplaying for a very, very, very long time, and I would consider her to be a very avid person within the Mooney community. So that's one person. Um, Another person, I would also say Lunar Lynn, because Lunar Lynn is another cosplayer, but she's cosplayed from the Nelke musicals, and is one of the first few people I had ever seen cosplaying from the Nelke musicals. So I think it'd be really cool to get her on this podcast.
Okay. Anyone else? Or is that it for now?
I mean, I have one more. She's actually a friend of mine. And she's another cosplayer. I have a lot of cosplayers that I think would be really cool to get onto the podcast, because I think cosplayers cosplaying from Sailor Moon can offer a really different perspective on the show, like having made costumes and studying things and stuff of that nature. So
Okay. Absolutely. What about you, Lumi?
Oh shoot, did you call me? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
This is
sorry.
going in the bloopers.
I'm so sorry. I have a couple people that I want to invite. So there's two people that I'm actually close friends with. Actually, no, one of them. Preston Humphrey. They're another Black creator, but they also love Sailor Moon a lot. And I know they would, really like to talk about it. They're also a State Lisa fan, but they're also a Christmas fan. And they have a lot of intakes and insights of Sailor Moon that I know would like to be like such an eye opener. Another one that Z also said is Vicky Vane. I absolutely adore their wigs. I hope to get one presented by them, hopefully in the future. And then another one that I want to invite is Super Sailor Virgo. And I say that because because they cosplayed the Sailor Moon villain, and I was like, oh my god, I absolutely adore that. And of course, Empress Jasmine.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. So there are some individuals that I would like to invite, and a couple of them I have already. Sailor Tortilla, who is known for her extensive Sailor Moon collection, has agreed to do a guest spot with us one day, so I'm really excited for that. Steve Soprano Diva, who is a big PGSM fan, has agreed to do an episode with us as well, so we're really looking forward to having her on. So hopefully we will be able to record with her soon. She's performing in Florida right now. I would love to have Jason Muel, who is the creator of TuxedoUnmasked.com. I think that he could definitely provide some insight because he can definitely provide some insight to some of the things that we're talking about, because he does some deep analysis into a lot of the Sailor Moon mythos. And I think I take some cues from him when it comes to some of the information that I give in regards to Sailor Moon, because I want to be as accurate as possible, because there are some inaccuracies, some discrepancies, and some misconceptions when it comes to Sailor Moon. So I'm hoping that this podcast will help correct that in some capacity. I would also like to have the Sailor Moon Fan Network on. They are equally known, like they were probably like next to Sailor Tortilla when it comes to extensive Sailor Moon collections. And a dear friend of mine by the name of Yosei, he has agreed to join us for an episode one day. He is also a big Sailor Moon fan and is very knowledgeable. So we definitely have some people in the pipeline to join us on Moonlight Justice. We don't want to be the only people talking about it. While we are the core group and the hosts of this podcast, we want to be able to lend a voice to other creators that have um, equal amount of love for the show as we do, and can provide a perspective that maybe we don't even have. So I'm really looking forward to guest portions of our show, but I'm also looking forward to um, the three of us having discussions as a group, because we vibe and we mesh so well, and I think that people will appreciate that. So yay for us.
Yay!
So we're closing out.
Yay!
And I want to know, are there any Sailor Moon projects that you guys are working on currently? And we will start with Lumi. Lumi, do you have anything going on Sailor Moon related?
At the moment, I have a couple of projects. I'm not saying them though. Y'all gonna just have to tune in, but they are cosplay projects. I do hope that, when they are able to come out, because I am handling them. No, Z, it is not related to the Sailor Suit I asked you about earlier. That is something that will be coming later. But it is a project I am currently working on cosplay-wise, and I'm very excited to show you guys. But other than that, no, not really.
Okay. And what about you, Z?
I'm gonna find out what Lumi's working on. My one project. Anyways, my one Sailor Moon cosplay project that I'm working on is Princess Sailor Moon. I'm reciprocating the fuku that Princess Sailor Moon wears. I'm making a few differences though with the costume, mainly with the colors. I'm going for more saturated colors. I know Princess Sailor Moon is known for like the really dark navy blue. I personally don't think I would look good in navy blue, so I'm going with a more royal blue tone for the skirt and the collar, and a more saturated-ish kind of pink for the bow. Just cause why not? I think it'll be nice, and I think it'll be a little different, and I'm trying to stray a little bit from like how everything has to be 100% canon. Like, it's okay to add a little bit of creative difference into it, as long as it's not like, I'm gonna make the skirt pink and make the collar yellow, and that's Princess Sailor Moon. No, that's probably like Kozagi from the parallel universe. But that's jokey joke. But that's the main one I've been working on, and I have slowly but steadily been getting that finished up.
Okay. And I've been working on a few projects myself. I have agreed to do edits on TikTok for Chaosu Studios, who is doing a spin-off as a continuation of the Sailor Stars anime from the 90s. It's called Sailor Moon Sacrifice. And it is they are currently working on a manga to tell a story about Usagi's twin sister Kurai, who is also a Sailor Moon herself. So I'm very interested to see how the story is going. Granted, I am a part of this group, but I have specifically asked for no spoilers, so I have no idea what's going on.
That's hilarious.
But they were doing a fan-made show on YouTube about a decade ago, and they were taking some of the anime footage from the 90s and re-editing it to try to make their own movie. And the project, kind of like fell to the wayside. Real life gets the best of us sometimes. So to kind of like compensate for that, they decided to go ahead and do a manga instead, which gives them more freedom. They're not limited with the existing footage of the 90s anime. So I'm really excited to see what they're going to come out with the manga, but I am taking footage from the YouTube series and doing like little TikTok edits here and there. So I'm really excited about that. I'm working on a fanfic. It's called Lost Soldier, and it is a retelling of the Sailor Moon story. Talked about it on my live. I talked about it with Z and Lumi. And it is a retelling, like I said, it's a retelling of the Sailor Moon story, and it's going to take the present day story will take place in Paris, France, and that's all I'm going to say about that, because I definitely am still working on it. It's a slow burn, but it is a little passion project of mine. And in the works, I have a secret PGSM project that I am working on.
What?
And I will leave it at that.
What? No. Run that back right now. You have a what?
I mean, it's still in the concept phase, so I don't really want to say too much about it, but it is PGSM related, and I'm gonna leave it at that.
Fine, I'll wait till you unveil it.
You will be okay, V. You will be okay.
You will be okay. You can't mention PGSM.
You will.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, and so we are going to close out this episode. You can follow us on www.moonlightjustice.com. You can follow us on Instagram at moonlight_justice. You can follow me on the Sailor Moon Guy on TikTok or Sailor Moon Guy on Twitter. And you can follow Z on Sailor Moon Turtle on Instagram or TikTok. And you can follow Lumi at luminary_peach on Instagram and TikTok. And in the name of the moon, I definitely encourage you to indulge in your quirks. Life is short, life is hard. Definitely take the time to treat yourself and, enjoy things in life. That's what I'm going to close out with. What about you, Z? What do you have to say as a closing?
In the name of the moon, remember to smile, because you look better when you smile. Like you mentioned, there is so much going on in this world right now, and if there's ways and things that you can do to make yourself smile and make other people smile, you'll make the world just a little bit brighter by doing it.
And Lumi?
In the name of the moon, remember, always be unfair and always make these messages. They are the best day ever. But in the name of the moon, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you for tuning in.